You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2399, Chapter 2399, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 3. Chapter 2399, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 3. This was the true number one person on the heaven roll. This was Su Yu. That kind of comprehension, that sudden feeling, even if they had not experienced it, they could still feel it. They could feel what Su Yu was comprehending. Cough, cough, cough. A light cough sounded, but it shook the hearts of people. The Tao King coughed lightly, and Moj also said in a clear voice, "City Lord Su, are you all right?" These people were doing this on purpose. Su Yu was slightly dazed. He raised his head to look at them and smiled. "I'm fine. I outlined an innate divine text. It's very strange, very strange. Just casually saying it can outline divine text. It's really strange. Infuriating people to death was not worth it." At this moment, the great Zhou King could not help but look at Su Yu with a solemn expression. After a long while, he said, "Su Yu, you should be the saint." Su Yu could not help but laugh when he saw everyone looking at him. With a smile, he said, "Everyone, don't take it seriously. It's normal for the great Zhou King to want to pit me to death. Everyone, don't be envious or jealous. Divine runes are just for fun. I often take the initiative to outline divine runes. I'm born with a lot of divine runes, so I can't be bothered to care." In his heart, however, he felt very strange. The Ming word divine runes were not human divine runes, but the true language of will. Just like the one word divine runes, this was the second special divine rune that he had outlined. It was not a human civilization. To be honest, the meaning of these two words could be big or small. When they were separated, they were nothing. When they were combined, the word civilization was not something that anyone could use. This was strange. He only had the thought of making the annals of all races. Why would such a divine text appear? It was really strange. At this moment, there were still some insights in his mind that he was digesting. As for being seen by others, Su Yu did not want to either. However, this was too much of a genius. Sometimes, a divine text would appear naturally. Su Yu was also very helpless. Su Yu did not take the Tao King and the others' disturbance seriously. Unless they attacked him, otherwise, Su Yu could not be bothered to be shaken a few times. It would not affect anything at all. Su Yu looked at the Golden Crow again. He said, "Senior Golden Crow, why don't I take a picture of you? I feel that the birth of this divine rune just now was definitely because Senior's Tao reserves were too profound and affected me. I can observe Senior's heroic bearing and perhaps I can even give birth to a divine rune. Senior, how about this? The second slot will only accept Senior's 2 7-star violet orchids." The Golden Crow was also stunned. This was possible. Of course, the 10,000 races had some special methods. However, no matter how special the methods were, recording a video would not be able to affect invincibility. It was surprised and pondered. It seemed that it was not impossible. Very quickly, it said, "All right. But Su Yu, if you think that you can use this method to curse me to death, then you are too naive." Su Yu couldn't help but laugh. "Senior, you're worrying too much. It's so easy to kill Invincible. The myriad clans in the heavens have long been unified by the Heavenly Abyss clan. This clan specializes in curses, but I haven't seen them curse me to death." This was the truth. The Golden Crow didn't say anything else, and Su Yu didn't stand on ceremony either. He directly took out a recording amulet and gave it to the other party. But in his heart, he was thinking about something. He was thinking about something. The Golden Book. Perhaps he hadn't developed it well enough. When he was producing the will of the myriad clans, the golden book trembled a few times. Could it be? A vague thought surfaced in his mind. Suddenly, looking at the blue sky beside him, the vague feeling in Su Yu's heart became clear. The will of the myriad clans. The golden book. The absorption of blood essence, the inheritance of cultivation techniques, the unity of the myriad clans. Seeing that he was deep in thought, the golden crow couldn't help but say, "See Su. It's time for the transaction. I've already bid for you. Hurry up, it's almost time for the second transaction to be completed." Su Yu nodded. At this moment, he had 28 divine runes. He didn't have the time to comprehend any of the special characteristics of the bright, divine runes. There was no rush. With the divine runes here, he wasn't afraid of losing them. He decided to accept only 2 7-star violet orchids. He devoured them on the spot. Soon, the remaining 2 characters advanced to level 4. Only the bright character had just been born, and it was still at level 2. Most of the time, this type of innate character would be at level 2. As for Su Yu, he still had a lot of unopened divine apertures. He took out another token and said, "Continue exchanging for treasures that can increase one's willpower." With the golden crow as the starting point, the other ancient clans were also quickly looking for treasures that were suitable for him to exchange for. Su Yu's price wasn't too high. It was still acceptable. Soon, another ancient clan chose to exchange for treasures. They also gave him heavenly materials and earthly treasures. After all, divine inscriptions weren't commonly used treasures. No one would carry a pile of divine inscriptions with them. Su Yu also started eating on the spot. Of course, before he started eating, the 3 stone sculptures would help him investigate so as not to poison Su Yu to death. As for the photo request, Su Yu continued to ask. Some people agreed to it, while others did not. He did not care too much about it. If he did not agree now, he would agree sooner or later. At that time, it would be like photographing a corpse. What exactly is that fellow Su Yu doing? On the human side, someone asked in a low voice. A group of people looked at him, yet he still dared to shout his name. Wasn't he afraid that he would kill you if he heard it? Xia Huyo curled his lips, he smiled and said, "Isn't that simple?" He ate it on the spot. Tell everyone that he has used everything. Other than killing him, he doesn't have anything good. Don't you understand? At the same time, let's verify whether these treasures are reliable or not. And at this moment, Su Yu was eating a mouthful of willpower. If someone really used the divine inscriptions to exchange for it, he would have directly shattered it. Cultivating on the spot was used to open the divine aperture and nurture the divine inscriptions. Su Yu didn't have any intention of leaving these things behind. If there were too many treasures, everyone would miss them. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2400, Chapter 2400, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 4. Chapter 2400, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 4. I used all of them. Do you know how amazing my spending is? You should understand how I became so powerful, right? In the blink of an eye, he sold 6 spots. All the divine runes, including the bright, divine runes that he had just outlined, had entered level 4. All 28 divine runes had entered level 4. This was extremely rare. As for the divine apertures, at Su Yu's level, it was actually very difficult to open them. However, Su Yu had eaten a lot of good things and used the sun and moon divine inscriptions to nourish and open them. In the blink of an eye, he had opened more than 10 divine apertures. And this kind of cultivation method was perhaps the only one in the entire world. Prodigal. Previously, Bai Feng had said so, but now, Hong Tan and Lu Wenyan had also said so. They were truly prodigal. They were not the only ones. They were invincible. Even if they did not say it out loud, they were probably cursing in their hearts. Prodigals. If one person was full, the whole family would not be hungry, right? There were so many good things, and this guy was just using them to raise his willpower and nurture divine runes. If this was not a prodigal, what was? Seeing that this guy was still going to continue selling, on the dragon tribe side, a dragon king said in a low voice, "Suyu, don't split it up and sell it. Our dragon tribe will buy 100 spots. How about one carrying object?" Suyu couldn't help but laugh. "What are you thinking about? Why would I want that thing?" As he said that, he casually tossed it in his hand and two carrying objects appeared. One of the carrying objects was the reverse scale of the ancient half-emperor of the dragon clan. Suyu smiled and said, "Even if I can cultivate to the point of 3-in-1, it's enough for me. Moreover, I might not even be able to cultivate to that level. With just these two pieces, I already feel that it's too much. Why would I still need a carrying object?" He was really angered to death. He smiled and said, "If you need them, I can sell the carrying objects." On the other side, Qin Zhen could not help but say, "Suyu, if you really want to sell them, my human side. Too poor, I won't trade." Suyu directly interrupted, "Manor-head Qin, it's not that I won't sell them. The key is that the human race is too poor. I can't afford them. One day, when I want to sell them, everyone can come and compete with me. I won't bring these things with me when I live or when I die. It's useless to keep them. At this moment, what I want is to increase my strength. Everything else is just empty talk." These words were spoken calmly, but there was a hint of sadness in them. He was going to die sooner or later. He might not even be able to cultivate to the 9th level of the Sun-Moon realm, so what was the point of having these things? On the dragon tribe's side, there were also changes in their expressions. The object in Suyu's hand was precisely the object that the dragon tribe's half-emperor had crushed the third generation's body with. They had originally wanted to use the item to buy a slot, but Suyu did not care about the item at all. This was very difficult to do. As for Suyu, he quickly smiled and said, "I'm not going to change it to improve my willpower now. We'll talk about it later. Right now, I want to change my blood essence. It's at least at the 7th level of the Sun-Moon realm. I want to make my blood essence. It's too weak. Do you guys have it? If you do, the price can be negotiated. For blood essence, you can get it after killing a few Sun and Moon realms. If you don't have it, the Bright Bird world is right here. If you're invincible, go in and kill a few 7th level Sun and Moon realms. That way, you can exchange 30 drops of 7th level Sun and Moon blood essence for one slot. You can just kill 3. 10 drops of 8th level Sun and Moon essence would be exchanged for one spot. 5 drops of 9th level Sun and Moon essence would be enough. Killing one would be exchanged for 2 spots. Around them, a group of invincible people had strange looks in their eyes. Strictly speaking, this deal was quite worth it. But, how embarrassing. Everyone was here. Exterminating someone else's territory wasn't good, right? And that Ho clan expert couldn't help but say, "City Lord Su, I have my eyes on this clan, you. What are you doing?" Suyu smiled and said, "It's just a casual remark. In public, can everyone really go and destroy the world? It's not that exaggerated. Everyone has lived for so many years and has some treasures on hand. I don't believe that they don't even have a bit of Sun and Moon blood essence. Could it be that Invincible is a saint and never kills?" After saying that, Suyu smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't verify which clan's blood essence is on the spot. I won't cause trouble for everyone. As long as you know it well, it's fine. The price is really not expensive. 5 drops of 9th level Sun Moon blood essence, killing one 9th level Sun Moon blood essence in exchange for 2 quotas, perhaps 2 people can go in and pick up the 9-leaf sky lotus. As he was speaking, in the distance, the great Zhou King smiled and threw a bottle over. 10 drops of 9th level Sun Moon Blood Essence, 50 drops of 8th level Sun Moon Blood Essence, in exchange for 7 quotas, is that rich? Suyu mumbled, and Qin Zhen also hurriedly threw out a bottle. I have one here too. 7th level Essence Blood of the Sun and Moon, 30 drops, 8th level Essence Blood of the Sun and Moon, 20 drops. In exchange for 3 slots. They still had this. Not long ago, there had been a great battle. Of course, that time, it had mainly been fought by Invincible. However, after participating in the battle for so many years, some of the essence blood of the Sun and Moon were still in stock, especially the heavy ones, so few people used them. Suyu chuckled and threw out 10 tokens. Soon, someone else used the blood essence to exchange for 20 tokens. At this point, Suyu only had 100 tokens left. He had exchanged a lot of blood essence for a lot of tokens. Some small clans were also very satisfied. The price they paid wasn't as big as they had imagined. Of course, it wasn't cheap, but it was at least some common treasures. Everyone could afford it. If Suyu wanted a load-bearing item, then everyone might not be able to afford it. In the end, when the Dragon Clan wanted to exchange for it, Suyu completely ignored them. He did not want a load-bearing item. Even if the eyes of some of the 9th-level Sun-Moon cultivators were red, they could do nothing about it. They did not need it, nor did they want to exchange for it. Suyu himself also had one. Unfortunately, those who wanted to take Suyu's place had better wash up and sleep. With 100 spots, Suyu smiled and said, 36 ancient cities and 34 other cities. I'll leave one for you. As for the rest, I'll leave 16 for you. As for the remaining 50, continue selling them. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2401, Chapter 2401, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 5. Chapter 2401, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 5. He only wanted 16. He had promised to give 5 great demons. 1 would be enough. As for the remaining 11, they would look at them again. When they heard that Suyu was going to sell 50 more, the group could not help but be overjoyed. Sure enough, it was still worth it for Suyu to take the quota. At most, they could just spend some money to buy it back. Suyu pondered for a moment, he opened his mouth and said, now that we have the blood essence and enough willpower, then everyone here is an old senior. There should be someone who has some ancient human cultivation techniques. It doesn't matter if it's not ancient. The first, second, and third generation of awakened human cultivation techniques are all fine. As long as it's suitable, PLL change them all. The moment these words were said, some people's expressions changed. On the human side, the great Zhou King's eyes moved slightly, but the others were confused. What did he mean? What first generation, second generation? At this moment, even the powerful clans were a little surprised. Dao King said indifferently, Suyu, what use do you have for these cultivation techniques? Suyu said speechlessly, research. PM a civilized master, don't you know? I like to derive cultivation techniques the most, don't you know? I've seen almost all of the cultivation techniques of the human race. It's boring. Give me some ancient cultivation techniques and exchange them for some. PLL study them, no problem, right? Dao King said indifferently, the cultivation techniques of the ancient human race, including the later generations, have been destroyed. Don't even think about it. Suyu looked around and smiled. So ruthless. It seems that the human race is really afraid of killing me. Then forget it, I want to exchange for some treasures to forge heavenly weapons. Remember, forging heavenly weapons isn't trash, don't give me trash. At this moment, the Tianzhu king could not help but ask, you want to forge a heavenly weapon? Everyone had almost forgotten that Su Yu was a weapon forging master. This guy wanted to forge a heavenly weapon. Su Yu smiled and said, there's no rush. PM just barely forging an earth weapon now. I want to forge a handy weapon for myself. Wait a little longer. If I die before I can forge it, PLL find a place to bury it and wait for the fated person. He didn't say much of the truth. In reality, Su Yu exchanged these things because he wanted to forge something to forge the will of all races. Some of the ideas he had before made Su Yu understand a little. He naturally couldn't forge a heaven soldier, but he could forge a prototype. He didn't necessarily need to forge a heaven soldier. An earth soldier was enough. Treasures that could be used to forge weapons and heavenly weapons were actually very rare. However, there weren't many powerful weapon forging masters in the universe. If everyone had the materials, it would be very difficult for them to use them. Very soon, there were people who exchanged for them. At this moment, the eyes of the Tiancheng king were red with envy. He really wanted to snatch Su Yu away. The materials that this guy had received were enough to forge 2 or 3 heavenly weapons. Su Yu suddenly smiled and said, Mystic Armor King, if you are willing to exchange your corpse, I will give you 50 slots. Are you willing to do it? In the distance, the Mystic Armor King's expression was unsightly. He instantly disappeared into the void and disappeared from his original spot. This bastard Su Yu had ill intentions. 50 slots, some of the aboriginals might really be tempted. Su Yu exchanged this and that. The number of slots gradually decreased, and he received quite a number of treasures. Even the gods couldn't help but exchange for a few. The price wasn't too high, so he could accept it. As for Su Yu, he did some calculations. He had enough treasures to forge a heavenly soldier, and he had enough blood essence. As for the blood essence of a civilized master, he couldn't specially get people to collect it. There were some things that couldn't be said too clearly. He hoped that some civilized master's blood essence existed among the collected blood essence. In any case, these invincible people didn't care whether they were civilized masters or warriors. The quality of the warrior's blood essence was better. Perhaps these guys gave it to civilized masters. Then what was he still lacking? Su Yu did some calculations. He currently lacked some treasures of the 9 transformations. However, the cultivation method wasn't suitable. It was actually useless to want treasures of the 9 transformations. It wasn't too late to plan it after the cultivation method was developed. As for the divine runes, to open the divine aperture, he might still need some to raise his willpower. In addition, it was the text of willpower. However, Su Yu was only suitable to use the human races. The other races' treasures would be useless to Su Yu. He was thinking about what else he needed. Beside him, Lan Tian suddenly transmitted his voice, exchange for a life and death fruit. Su Yu was surprised. What was this? Lan Tian quickly said, that's right. You still have 80 spots left. Use the remaining 30 to exchange for it. Just exchange for one. There should be people who will exchange for it. Although Su Yu was surprised, he still said, I'm not selling the remaining 30 spots alone. I want to exchange for a life and death fruit. The moment these words were said, some people's eyes became strange. The king of the Ho clan said faintly, exchange for a fruit of life and death. This thing is not easy to get. Su Yu, are you paving a way out for yourself? Su Yu was at a loss. He did not quite understand what he meant. Of course, he would not say it. He said with a smile, King Ho, do you have? King Ho shook his head, he laughed and said, this thing is very rare. The demons and celestials may have it, but the celestials may also have it. The fruit of life and death is a difficult thing to obtain. Years ago, he too consumed this thing. After he died, he quickly recovered a portion of his memories. You are prepared to follow the same path as he too. Su Yu's heart trembled slightly. He used it to recover his memories. At this moment, Dao King said indifferently, See Su Yu, a person is already dead. Why pursue the next life? It's good to start over and turn into a dead spirit. Moreover, you may not even have the chance to do it again. Moj also interrupted, this thing is too rare. How many people dare to enter the dead spirit world when it grows in the dead spirit river? Moreover, the place where it grows is also extremely dangerous. Under normal circumstances, this thing will only grow on the dead spirits of half-emperors. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2402, Chapter 2402, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 6. Chapter 2402, Chapter 519, Fruit of Life and Death 6. Su Yu was surprised once again. This was a little strange. How did Lan Tian know about this? This fellow knew quite a lot. The key was, could this thing really restore the memories of the undead? In that case, it was indeed a good thing. Even though a person had died, it could still restore some memories. This was not something that ordinary undead could do. Many undead were actually just a piece of blank paper. Even if they had memories and intelligence, they might only be born later. He too had taken this thing before. No wonder he had quickly regained his memories after his death, even though they were not perfect. Su Yu knew the benefits of this thing, he immediately said, 30 slots. Everyone, this is not a small amount. Which clan will have 30 people? They might be able to obtain 30 items, or they might be able to obtain the 9-leafed sky lotus. Even if they can't obtain the 9-leafed sky lotus, they will be able to pick up a few divine weapons and become rich. What I want is only the fruit of life and death. Since I'm about to die, I should at least leave some preparations and memories behind for myself. After all, I've transformed into a dead spirit and can't come out. He too has recovered some of his memories, but after so many years, he still can't do anything but roar. At this moment, the several powerful clans were all silent. Do they have the fruit of life and death? At the very least, the demon clan did have it before. After the flame demon recovered some of his ancient memories, some people deduced that the demon clan had sent people to infiltrate the dead spirit world and use the fruit of life and death to awaken some of his memories and intelligence. After that, they would receive it. Otherwise, if it had no memories, there would be no point in receiving it. Just as everyone was silent, a demon figure suddenly appeared in the air. It was extremely powerful, and its long blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. It said indifferently, I'll change. Su Yu, you want the fruit of life and death, I have it here. Blood Fire Demon King. Moj frowned and couldn't help but look at the other party. The Blood Fire Demon King walked out of the air and threw a black box to Su Yu's side. It said indifferently, you can let Xing Hong and the others take a look. This is the fruit of life and death. Su Yu looked at Xing Hong. A light appeared in Xing Hong's eyes. He looked at the box and nodded. After a long while, he transmitted his voice to Su Yu, I wanted to tell you before, but this thing is very rare. The demon race had it. It was also a half-emperor of the previous generation of the demon race. It sneaked into the passage of the dead souls and then died when it came back. It must have been caused by too many injuries in the dead souls world. I didn't expect the demon race to have this thing. The most important thing was that it was in the hands of the Blood Fire Demon King. This item could indeed be considered a precious treasure. When it died, it would be able to retain a portion of its memories. To the dead souls that had no intelligence, it was an extremely important treasure. Tian He and the others around Su Yu understood what it meant, and they were almost drooling. City Lord, this was almost certain death. It was a synonym for the dead souls. If it had such a treasure, then it would be incredible if it could still retain some memories even after death. It was almost impossible for someone to have intelligence unless they were invincible and had fallen and turned into a dead spirit. Su Yu glanced at the Bloodfire Demon King. The other party had taken the initiative to throw the item to him. If Su Yu really wanted to take it, he could just run away. However, after thinking about it, he gave up. This person was not someone to be trifled with. His strength was not comparable to a half-emperor, but he was about the same as the great Xia Emperor. Perhaps he was stronger, or perhaps he was not inferior to the great Qin Emperor. Su Yu hesitated for a moment, but he still threw the 30 tokens over. The Blood-Fire Devil King took the tokens and disappeared without looking at anyone else. He came quickly and left even faster. It was obvious that he wanted to get more spots and let more people enter. His goal was probably the 9-leaf Sky Lotus, which could help him become a half-emperor. No matter how precious the fruit of life and death was, it was still used by the dead, and it was useless to the living. Would he want to use this thing after he died? On the side, Lon Tian saw that Su Yu had finished changing and had also changed, so he let out a slight sigh of relief. He transmitted his voice, "Keep it for now, don't use it in a hurry. This is what the 10,000 heavenly saints told me to tell you." He said that Yi Batian might have turned into a dead spirit, and maybe he lost his memory. If he meets it one day, it might be useful. If you can't meet him and you're about to die, then use it for yourself. Su Yu was speechless. He was cursing him. So it was Old Wan's intention. He wanted me to guide Yi Batian. Would the 5th generation really turn into a dead spirit? That might not be the case. The 5th generation were not residents of the ancient city, so they might not necessarily turn into a dead spirit. Of course, it was said that those who were powerful could be guided by the dead spirit Tianhe. At this point, Su Yu traded out all the remaining slots. Leaving 50 slots was not too eye-catching. The items exchanged were quite a lot. In fact, even though they were said to be precious and worthless, they were actually just that. Especially the life and death fruit, there were not many people who could use it. This was also good. Everyone would not keep staring at him because he had too many good things. At least to Invincible, there were not many things on Su Yu that were worth coveting. The life and death outcome was not as attractive as the carrying object. At this moment, all the spots had been settled. The white-haired godly king looked around and said calmly, "See you in a month's time at the Starry Manor. Those without a token are not allowed to enter. The special passageway allows all races to enter at will. They are responsible for their own lives. Su Yu, I hope that I can see you one day." If Su Yu did not enter, then it would not be fun. If he entered, it would be much easier to kill him. Su Yu chuckled and said, "Don't worry, I will be there. I have yet to see the Starry Manor. As for whether I can enter or not, it depends on whether the Sirs are targeting me. If they are too targeted, I will consider it." The group of people did not say anything else and instantly disappeared. Next, they waited for the Starry Manor to officially open. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2403, Chapter 2403, Chapter 520 Civilization 1. Chapter 2403, Chapter 520 Civilization 1. The others had left, but on the human side, the great Zhou King and the others had yet to leave. Actually, it was not just the great Zhou King. There were a few aboriginal experts who had escaped into the void with King Ho. They were whispering to each other. They did not know if they had gone to the bright light world or if they wanted to secretly hunt and kill the immortals. After all, Su Yu's words were very sweet. The few old monsters were quite moved. They were all ferocious creatures. King Ho, that old golden crow, and a few great demons that didn't seem to be easy to deal with. These fellows had sneaked away. Perhaps they were doing something big. Su Yu was just about to return to the city when the great Zhou king suddenly shouted, "Su Yu, wait a moment. Can we chat for a bit?" Su Yu was surprised. The old turtle wanted to chat with him. Chat about what? The great Zhou king's eyes flickered. He glanced at Su Yu, and Su Yu's tribulation divine text jumped for a moment. He was shocked. Damn, with my current strength, it was just a thought. Could it be that the other party had sensed it? It was not that exaggerated, right? Old turtle. Su Yu said this in his heart again, but he did not open his sea of will. On the other side, the great Zhou king's eyebrows twitched slightly. He looked at Su Yu with a strange expression. Old turtle. Su Yu criticized him again in his heart. The great Zhou king coughed lightly and laughed lightly. Su Yu, how about a chat? Also, why are you so hostile to me? Su Yu instantly denied it and shook his head. The great Zhou king is the strongest human being. A half-emperor level powerhouse conceals his strength and secretly guards the human race. He is the greatest hero of the human race and has protected us for hundreds of years. I am eternally grateful. The great Zhou king looked at him. Behind him, Niu Baidao could not help but say, Su Yu, don't talk nonsense. It's easy for the 10,000 races to take it seriously. There was no need to spout nonsense. If the 10,000 races really took it seriously, the great Zhou king would be in danger. It was normal for Su Yu and the great Zhou manor to not get along. After all, they had been fighting for many years. However, the great Zhou king was one of the top 3 experts in the human realm. If they really conned him, the losses to the human race would be too great. Su Yu could not help but laugh. It's just flattery. If the 10,000 races really took it seriously, then the 10,000 races would be idiots. If I said that half-emperor is half-emperor, then I would say that the great Qin king, Daming Manor, and great Xia king are all half-emperors. Those idiots wouldn't take it seriously. Arrogant fellows. There were still quite a number of people on the island who hadn't left yet. Su Yu didn't care. He grinned at the people below and said, look carefully, listen carefully. I'm afraid that you won't have the chance to listen in your next life. Why don't you join me and PLL give you a chance to turn into undead spirits? He laughed until his teeth turned black. The aura of death spread out, and his eyes were cold. I'm about to die, yet I'm still afraid of you. Everyone understood what he meant. A group of living beings quickly escaped. This fellow was now a madman. There was no need to provoke him, and he couldn't be provoked. The scene of Su Yu's performance today made everyone feel that this fellow might really be going crazy. Young, extremely talented. And now, 351 years had just passed. It was now 352 years of peace. Su Yu just happened to be 20 years old, the number 1 on the heaven roll, the overlord of the ancient city. His talent was so high that people looked up to him. Such a person knew in advance that he would not live long. If it were anyone else, there was a possibility that he would go crazy. It was inevitable that he would be unable to accept it. Once these crazy people really went crazy, at the last moment of their lives, they might cause unimaginable trouble. Therefore, the various clans were actually quite lenient towards Su Yu. Including the fact that he had seized more than 100 spots and sold dozens of them, the 10,000 clans actually did not set too many barriers and troubles. Was there a need to be so calculative with a madman who could cause great trouble to an invincible person, even though they knew that he would not live for long, yet they still insisted on fighting with him? Wasn't it a loss to give up his own life? This was the main reason why the 10,000 races were rather lenient towards him. It wasn't because he was the master of the ancient city, the master of the ancient city. No matter how strong the stone sculpture was, could it really overturn an entire world? If it was really that powerful, the gods and demons wouldn't be able to dominate the 10,000 worlds. Each race naturally had their own trump cards. The reason why they were afraid of Su Yu was because he was about to die. A person on the verge of death was really difficult to deal with. Those people ran for their lives. Soon, the entire Tianxia island fell silent. At this moment, only a few humans were still here. The great Zhou King invited again, "Can we talk?" "I don't have time. I'm too busy." At this moment, someone finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He said with some grievance, "Su Yu, no matter what, you re still a human. His Majesty, the great Zhou King, has protected the human race for more than 400 years. He has protected billions of people. He has bled for the human race time and time again. He has fought for the human race. Even if you are extremely talented, even if you are invincible in the world, can you treat His Majesty so slowly? Could it be that in these 400 years, your Su clan has grown up from the heavenly battlefield? You, Su Yu, were in the human realm. No matter what, you have enjoyed more than 10 years of peace and prosperity. Now, because of the targeting of a small number of people, you cannot differentiate between right and wrong. Even His Majesty and the others have to vent their anger." That was an expert from the great Zhou manor. He was not too old. At this moment, he said somewhat angrily, "You treating His Majesty so slowly has also chilled the hearts of the people. Su Yu, do you think it's appropriate?" Su Yu smiled and looked at that person, then looked at the great Zhou King and the others. He smiled lightly and said, "It's not very appropriate. In terms of age, he's an elder. In terms of merit, his merit is outstanding. It's absolutely not something that I, Su Yu, can compare to. I don't have much contribution to the human race. The 18 years of peace and prosperity indeed depend on the protection of all of you unrivaled experts. In terms of strength, he's far inferior. Moreover, the great Zhou King even gave me some pointers because I sketched out his divine text. Therefore, in terms of emotions and reason, I should not be like this." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2404, Chapter 2404, Chapter 520 Civilization Kju subscribe, 2. Chapter 2404, Chapter 520 Civilization Kju subscribe, 2. Only then did that person feel relieved, but Su Yu had a smile on his face. He said playfully, "But I just want to ask, when the Lu family was destroyed, did His Majesty of Great Zhou not know, or did he know, but he didn't care? Just this one point, nothing else." "Right, there's one more point. Those martial uncles and the like that I have never met before, when they were killed, did His Majesty not know, or did he know and didn't care?" Su Yu said with a smile, "Of course. Actually, I have a good relationship with Teacher Lu in the Lu family. I haven't even met those martial uncles and uncles of mine. I haven't even met my senior sister's parents, but I like to hold grudges. Today, if His Majesty the Great Zhou King says that he knows nothing about all of this, Su Yu will kowtow to apologize. I am 2F** King unworthy. To treat the heroes of the human race and the heroes who protect us with such an attitude, I shouldn't be a human. Your Majesty, tell me, do you know?" He looked at the great Zhou King, and the great Zhou King looked back at him. After a long while, the great Zhou King said softly, "I know a thing or two." Su Yu smiled. The expression of the person behind the great Zhou King changed, and he could not nelp but 100k at tne greats no king. He Nernadalwai said, "Your Majesty, you." The great Zhou King raised his hand. He said indifferently, "If you do it, you are not afraid of people knowing, and you are not afraid of people talking about it. Perhaps you, Su Yu, find it unpleasant to hear, but to me, to many people, your lineage is indeed abandoned, and there is no need to deny anything." Su Yu chuckled and said, Great Zhou King is straightforward. Actually, this is what I want to hear. Being abandoned, standing in the overall situation of the human race, it's worth it. Using a few fellows to exchange for this times many. Invincible Tao verification experts, exchanging for the killing of Blazing Sea King, exchanging for a great increase in the strength of the human race, and exchanging for 50 years of peace, it's really worth it. But as abandoned children, it's not too much for us to resent you, right? The great Zhou King calmly said, it's not too much. It's only right to hate. Since you said so, then say it more directly. If no one in your line rises, then it's fine to sacrifice. That's the truth. There's no need to argue. Suyu chuckled and said, that's right. So, I didn't say anything. But I saw that your subordinates didn't seem too happy and felt that I was neglecting you. But, could it be that His Majesty expects me to worship you? In the distance, Lu Wenyan lightly shouted and stopped Suyu. He looked at the great Zhou King, he slightly bowed and said, Your Majesty, please forgive him. He is too young. For the sake of the human race, sacrificing some people and helping some people is something that should be done. My Lu family is extremely honored. Suyu faintly smiled and said, Teacher is right. Sacrificing a small Lu family in exchange for many people from the Zhou family to witness the Tao. From the Zhou family's point of view, it's really worth it. If it were me, sacrificing some Zhou family members in exchange for you to witness the Tao, teacher, in exchange for my father to witness the Tao. I also feel that it's worth it. If a person doesn't do it for himself, the heavens will destroy the earth. There's no need to say anything. After all, it wasn't the great Zhou King who personally did it. The key is, if it's done, then it's done. If it's done, there's no need for us to treat everyone as benefactors, right? Suyu said with a smile, if I sacrificed the Zhou family members in exchange for my family members to witness the Tao, tell me that I have to go to the Zhou family and look for their descendants to tell them that you have to understand me. I'm doing this for the sake of the human race. You should treat me as a hero and worship me. Isn't that inappropriate? Although my family has become invincible and will protect the human race, I will not force the descendants of the Zhou family to treat me as a hero, right? After these words were said, everyone fell silent. The great Zhou King nodded, he laughed softly and said, What you said makes sense. There is no need to be polite to me. Some things are done and done. I can only say that my standpoint is different. I will not feel that what I did was wrong. Suyu, what do you think? Suyu nodded. To others, you're not wrong. You're right. After all, this matter doesn't concern us. The human race is strong and everyone benefits. But to the person involved, I think it's better not to force these things. Does His Majesty feel that it's reasonable? It's reasonable. The great Zhou King nodded, Suyu smiled and said, That's good. I knew His Majesty would be reasonable. Cultured people, all like to be reasonable. Only those idiots like moral kidnapping. They want the victim to accept the perpetrator's apology. If they don't accept it, it's going too far, it's being unreasonable. So, you killed my entire family. If you apologize, I'll have to forgive you. This isn't appropriate, right? The person behind the great Zhou King's face was slightly red. He gritted his teeth and said, But His Majesty isn't the murderer. Suyu smiled and said, So, I didn't say that I wanted to beat the great Zhou King to death, right? As the leader of the human race, the great Zhou King watched the Lu family being exterminated. He was not an ordinary person. He was a law enforcer. The law enforcer watched the murder happen and disregarded everything. Then, do you think that the law enforcer is responsible? I went to the great Zhou manor to kill your entire family. The great Zhou King was in the manor. He saw it with his own eyes, but he ignored it. Let me ask you, do you think that the great Zhou King is the hero in your heart? If you think so, I can play with you. Try it. That person's gaze changed, and he was somewhat dejected. He lowered his head and did not speak again. At this moment it was somewhat complicated. Perhaps, he was not the person involved, so he could not understand all of this. As for Su Yu, he was not one either. However, he was Lu Wenyan's disciple, and he was a descendant of the many divine languages department. Thus, he did not accept these things and would not worship the great Zhou King. This was also his right. The great Zhou King did not say much and did not interrupt Su Yu's words, allowing him to speak. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2405, Chapter 2405, Chapter 520 Civilization Chiu Subscribe, 3. Chapter 2405, Chapter 520 Civilization Chiu Subscribe, 3. After Su Yu finished speaking, he said softly again, "Now, can we talk?" Su Yu smiled and said, "Of course, it's my honor." The great Zhou King looked at the 3 stone sculptures and said softly, "They can." Su Yu shook his head and smiled, "Rest assured, Your Majesty. Unless I die, the Lord should not harm me." The great Zhou King smiled and said nothing more. Su Yu's vision blurred, and his surroundings turned into darkness. On the other side, the great Zhou King looked at him with his hands behind his back. After a long while, he sighed and said, "It's a pity. If I had known that you were so talented, I would have kept you in the human race no matter what." Su Yu smiled and said, "It's different. If I had stayed in the human race, perhaps I would not have the talent I have now. Talent is just a saying. Don't take it seriously. If I didn't see and experience all this, how would I have the knowledge and talent? I don't believe that there aren't many people with strong talent in the various divine literature departments hidden in the various manners. I think they should all be very strong, but why aren't they strong? Because they don't have the knowledge and experience. Their sky is the sun and the moon, and they are invincible. Invincible should be worshipped, and in my eyes, invincible can also be killed. Invincible can also be killed." The great Zhou King mumbled and nodded, "Yes, invincible can also be killed. Invincible is not truly invincible. In all the worlds in the universe, who dares to say that they are truly invincible?" He smiled and quickly regained his calm. He looked at Su Yu and said, "Do you still have hope to escape?" Su Yu smiled and said, "It depends on luck. It's not like there is no hope at all. For example, cutting off the Death Chi passage and killing Star Moon Sovereign might be enough." The great Zhou King said calmly, "Then, what if the human race is willing to kill Star Moon for you? Are you willing to return to the human race?" Su Yu laughed dryly and said, "You must be joking, great Zhou King. Star Moon Sovereign is a necromancer sovereign. If we kill her, there might be half-emperor necromancers, or even stronger ones. For a Ling Yun whose heart is no longer with the human race, I can't bear the loss of an invincible human." Strange. Was the great Zhou King trying to probe, or was he serious? "Moreover, I will not allow you to kill my family's Star Moon. What a cute Star Moon, my all-purpose charging treasure. Whoever kills Star Moon will be making things difficult for me." "Why?" The great Zhou King was silent for a moment. "You don't have to be hostile towards me. Or rather, I don't care whether you are hostile towards me or not. All of this is meaningless. Actually, I just want to ask, if you free, do you think you have any hope of going further than Yibadian? Can you activate the power of human suppression?" This was the attitude of the great Zhou King over the years. He did not suggest starting a war with the outside world. He only had one goal: to first activate the power of human suppression. From the beginning to the end, he was not acting. Indeed, he only had one goal. The great Zhou King continued, he continued, the so-called unrivaled civilized masters of all races in the heavens are all a joke. Only on the human side, unrivaled civilized masters might truly be unrivaled. And this path is difficult to walk, too difficult to walk. Not Yi Batian, not the southern borderless, not Yun Chen, not even the 10,000 heavenly saints. Including Xia Chen, he can do it either. Shaking his head gently, the great Zhou King said softly, today, Lu Wenyan, who is known as the second Yi Batian, is very talented, but he is still a little lacking. He can't reach that stage. Su Yu, do you think you can do it? Su Yu was just about to speak, the great Zhou King said seriously, don't fool me. There is no need to fool me. Su Yu, if you think that you can do it and you can reach that stage, I will support you to go on. It is not just me. Many people will support you to go on. If there are more, I dare not say. More than 10 eternal beings will be like me and continue to go on. Su Yu's eyes moved slightly, but soon, he shook his head, thank you, great Zhou King, for your kind words. Perhaps I can now say that I can, and perhaps I can really get your Majesty's help. Unfortunately. There's no need, and it's not important. Besides, I didn't take the opening of the human race's oppression seriously at all. Su Yu smiled, and his smile was somewhat playful. Besides, didn't the great Zhou King ask me what would happen if I became a human king? Why didn't the great Zhou King ask? What would happen if I became a human emperor? The great Zhou King was surprised. He looked at him and said, then. What if you became a human emperor? Su Yu said indifferently, those who refuse to submit, kill. Those who refuse to listen, kill. All races worship, and only I am supreme. As for the suppressive force, does the human realm really exist? Does it really exist? Does it really exist? 3 times in a row, Su Yu's gaze turned cold as he said, Great Zhou King, I feel that all of you are dreaming. I have already been worshipped by 10,000 races, and no one in the world dares to disobey me. What sort of suppressive force do I need to set up? If I cannot defeat the 10,000 races, the human race will decline. If my descendants cannot defeat them, then I will rise up. If I cannot rise up, I do not have the qualifications to be this overlord, then I will be eliminated. Because, the 10,000 races are the law of the jungle. Why would they use any suppressive force? How meaningless is it to restrict oneself? The great Zhou King looked at him, his mouth wide open. After a long while, he muttered, no. 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 Had he considered this possibility? He had definitely considered it. However, he, or rather, many humans saw this as their last resort, their last hope. He could not say it, and he did not allow anyone to say it either. Yes, there was a suppressive force, and it could definitely be activated. The human realm would become the safest rear end. It would not be like what Su Yu had said, it would not. The great Zhou King gently exhaled, Su Yu, do you know that your words are too unpleasant to hear? Your words will only cause people to despair, and will not ignite hope. Do you think that these words will cause people to fight to the death? No, it won in despair, perhaps there will be some unexpected results. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2406, Chapter 2406, Chapter 520 Civilization Kju subscribe, 4. Chapter 2406, Chapter 520 Civilization Kju subscribe, 4. It's nothing more than betrayal. Su Yu smiled and said, perhaps, someone had considered it long ago and even done it. You, the great Zhou King, give people hope. You're invincible and not stupid. Can you really take all of it seriously? I can think of things, but has no one ever considered whether the human race has the ability to suppress people? I think, the possibility of burning Sea King's betrayal isn't just because the 5th generation bullied him, right? Perhaps he was also filled with despair, so he made this choice. The great Zhou King glanced at him and sighed. I understand what you mean. Then, PLL asked one last question. If one day, the human race needs you, will you go back? Depends on the situation. Suyu said calmly, if I can help, I don't mind helping. In the end, I'm still a human. However, what do you expect of me? Don't even think about it. You expect me to sacrifice myself to save the world? Sacrifice my father to save you? Sacrifice my teacher to save the world? Sacrifice the little me to perfect the big me? I haven't become a saint yet. When I become a saint, perhaps I will give a different answer. The great Zhou King exhaled lightly and nodded. It's enough. It's enough that I can say something to lend a hand. I have no other intentions in telling you this today. If you want to leave this body one day, you can look for me in the human realm. Thank you, Your Majesty, but that day should not come. Perhaps, at that time, I would rather walk towards the dead soul realm. The great Zhou King's body trembled slightly. He turned his head to look at him and very quickly disappeared in front of Suyu. Suyu walked out of that space. The humans outside were also instantly taken away by the great Zhou King, including Lu Wenyan and the others. Suyu smiled, then turned around and walked toward the ancient city. A stone sculpture appeared. Yunxiao said strangely, I think he's not lying. If you go back, he might really help you get rid of Xingyue and let you regain your freedom. In the human race, with his protection, I think you'll be safer. This person is very strong. Xing Hong also said in a low voice, very strong. Suyu, this person gave me the feeling that perhaps he hadn't stepped into the immortal soul third level, but not necessarily, he might not have the chance to fight against the immortal soul third level. Yun Xiao and I might only be able to fight against him if we completely remove our petrified bodies. Suyu was surprised. Sir, you mean? Right now, we're actually not completely free. Our petrified bodies might look like they've been removed, but in reality, they haven't. This is because we need to guard the passage. This person feels that he's a bit stronger than me in my petrified state. In short, he was very strong. Suyu was not surprised and nodded, he is definitely strong. I have always felt that he might not be weaker than the great Qin King because he is very sinister and can endure. Even if you kill his son, he might not go all out. As he said this, Suyu smiled and said, but I don't like him. Perhaps he is more suited to the temperament of a human leader. He can lead the human race further and safer, but, if I don't like him, I don't like him. Maybe PM Young, or maybe it involves my friends and relatives. Even if PM not, I won't like him. Different paths lead to different strategies. Our ideals are in conflict. Xing Hong smiled and said, is that so? Can you tell me about your ideals? Suyu chuckled and said, it's nothing. My ideals are simple. If I can win, I'll fight. If I can't win, I'll admit defeat. If I can't admit defeat, I'll fight with all my might. If I can't win, PLL bite him even if I die. If I can't bite him, I'll die. That's it. Xing Hong laughed. What about him? Suyu thought for a moment and said, I don't know much about him, but I have a general judgment. He's the kind of person who can endure it. If he can't win, he'll admit defeat. If he can't admit defeat, I'll fight with all my might. If he can't admit defeat, he'll continue to admit defeat. He'll be so terrified that even when the other party spits, he'll still have a smile on his face. It wasn't until one day, when he felt that he could win, that he would turn hostile. Therefore, the result was that he might win, but the process would definitely be filled with humiliation. And I don't want the process to be filled with humiliation, even if I lose in the end. Xing Hong smiled and said, in my opinion, you're much more reckless. Maybe he's right. Suyu shrugged. I didn't say that he was wrong, but I don't like it. No matter how many theories there are, it can't stop me from not liking him. There's nothing wrong with that. Xing Hong laughed. It's just that you're still young. I hope that I won't be old again. Su Yu interrupted him and laughed. It's precisely because I'm young that I dare to say that. If I'm really old and experienced, I might not even be as good as him. However, it's precisely because I'm young that I can't stand him. Xing Hong did not say anything else. Yun Xiao, on the other hand, said with a smile, "That's right, it's better to be younger. Only when you're young can you have the drive. Countless years ago, we were also young. At that time, our ideals were very great, and we raised the death spirit world. In the end, this position lasted for countless years. Now, we no longer have the impulsiveness and hot-bloodedness of the past. So, you're also a hot-blooded youth?" Su Yu secretly cursed in his heart. Yun Xiao smiled. He said, "If there's nothing else, then I'll return to the sacred city." Oh right, the head of the Heaven Hunting Pavilion's Sky Division shouldn't be someone from the ancient era. However, he might be an expert from a few eras ago. I feel that he's a little familiar, but the other party's barrier is too deep. As for who he is, I'm not too familiar with him. Xing Hong nodded. I'm a little familiar with him too. I might have seen him before, but he really isn't one of those experts who survived the ancient era. Otherwise, I would have more or less felt it. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2407, Chapter 2407, Chapter 520 Civilization Kju Subscribe, 5. Chapter 2407, Chapter 520 Civilization Kju Subscribe, 5. Su Yu nodded. As long as he knew, it wouldn't have much of an impact on him. In that case, could it be that the pavilion master of the Heaven Hunting Pavilion was really an antique from the ancient era? Who knew? This time, the other party felt that they were keeping a low profile. Such a large organization had only managed to get 40 spots. Who knew what they were thinking? They were so rich, yet they didn't buy Su Yu's spots even when he sold them. They only got 40 slots. It was unknown whether it was because they needed so many slots, or that many fellows were actually mixed in with the various races, preparing to enter with them. Soon, Su Yu entered the city. As for the slots, he had also distributed them. One for each city. As for who exactly would go, he did not care. The remaining 16 slots were given to the great demons. Whether they died or not, Su Yu did not care. After giving them all, Su Yu still had 11 spots left. As for these 11 spots, they would have to look at Lu's city first. This time, the human race did not obtain many spots. Of the 420 spots, Great Zhou King in Qin Town had bought 10, which meant that there were only 430 spots. If they split them evenly, one invincible person would not even get 10 spots. Previously, they had chosen people based on 20 spots. With so many people, even though Lu's city sent out a few people, it didn't mean that they would definitely get many spots. If it wasn't enough, Su Yu could subsidize a few spots. At the very least, he had to subsidize Wulan. Wulan didn't even get a spot, so how could she disguise herself? Speaking of which, could she really disguise herself as Wulan? Su Yu sighed. PM getting more and more shameless. Why am I already thinking about this? I'm just casually thinking about it, but it doesn't mean that I really want to disguise myself as her. There are so many men, so why must I stare at her? Strange. It's better for me to pretend to be my teacher than to pretend to be her. Forget it, my teacher has his own destiny. Besides, as his teacher, Bai Feng would definitely cause some trouble. The 10,000 clans might also stare at him, so I should give up. Su Yu didn't think about it anymore. He returned to the city lord's manor and took out some materials. He stared at the materials for a while. In his heart, he recalled his previous thoughts. The will of the myriad races. Creating a will of the myriad races? Suyu lightly tapped his chair, and thoughts rose one after another. Will of the myriad races, is this his own Tao? Or is this his obsession? Or has it been influenced by the Golden Atlas? When this thought appeared in his mind, a piece of divine text was actually born, forming the word civilization. This was the strangest thing. This meant that he had understood something, and what had fused with it to produce this type of divine text. The will of all races had fused with his own Tao. The Tao of civilization. He took out two divine texts, the civilization divine text. At this moment, the two divine texts were still fused together. The text, divine text had a characteristic that could make the divine text more powerful. It could be considered an amplifier. And what was the use of the Ming divine text? Ming Wu understood, tomorrow. Suyu mumbled for a while. He didn't really understand it, but he would know after giving it a try. He took out the divine text, and the little hairy ball was sleeping soundly on the divine text. Suyu couldn't be bothered with it. Recently, this guy had been very comfortable, and he often snored. He casually pulled and threw the little hairy ball away. The little hairy ball opened its eyes and looked at Suyu. It yawned, feeling a little wronged. Forget it, it continued to sleep. Very soon, it entered the sea of will again and slept on the calamity character divine text. This time, Suyu did not bother with it. He stared at the two divine texts in front of him. Suyu stared at them for a while, as if he had understood something, but also as if he did not understand anything. Very soon, Suyu ignited the flame of inheritance and his willpower began to burn. Suyu's mind became much clearer. When he looked at the divine text again, he had a different feeling. Suyu's eyes flickered. He suddenly grabbed the little hairy ball and grabbed it. He ignored the little hairy ball PS wronged. Suddenly, he stuffed the divine text into the little hairy ball's mouth. The little hairy ball turned pale with fright. Fishing. The fragrant wanted to fish it. It was familiar with this routine. He hurriedly shouted, I won't eat it, I definitely won't eat it. I won't eat it even if you beat me to death. I'm not this kind of ball. Fragrant, listen to my explanation. Listening to your excuses is more like it. Suyu snorted and frowned. I didn't give it to you to eat. Stop talking nonsense. Open your mouth. Your body is a little strange. The divine runes can't fuse into your body. You might really be the embodiment of the divine runes. Strange fellow. Little hairy ball was depressed. Wasn't he giving it to me to eat? Then should I lick it in my mouth? It was a strange hobby. Even though he thought about it, he still obediently swallowed the divine runes and licked it in his mouth. It was really fragrant. It felt even more fragrant than the word calamity. After sleeping for a while, there was already such a fragrant divine rune. He wanted to eat it, but unfortunately, he was afraid that the fragrant fishing would kill him, so he gave up on the thought of eating it. As for Suyu, he began to control the divine text and use its characteristics. His vision blurred as if he had seen something. He was dazzled and confused. At this moment, he seemed to have heard something. The fragrant fish definitely wants to fish me. This ball won't fall for it. Suyu felt that his will almost didn't belong to him anymore. At this moment, he seemed to have merged with the small hairy ball. He seemed to have seen something. He seemed to have returned to the past. He seemed to recall the days in the ancient god-devouring realm. He saw the heaven origin ancient tree. He saw a huge hairy ball. In the next moment, the huge hairy ball raised its head and looked at him strangely. Suyu's vision went black and he quickly fell back into his body. When he opened his eyes again, the little hairy ball stared at him and said strangely, "It smells so good." I just had a dream. It's so strange. I think I went home. Su Yu was stunned for a moment. For a moment, countless thoughts rose in his mind. Strange divine runes. He had actually fused with little Hairy Ball. What did he see? He saw the past. What did this mean? Civilization. What did this have to do with civilization? Su Yu was a little absent-minded. Civilization, fused. This civilization, wouldn't it let me experience the feeling of truly becoming one of the 10,000 races? Only by merging with it can I truly understand the civilization of the 10,000 races. Blue Sky's clone did have this bit of interest in it. Merging with the 10,000 races, becoming one of the 10,000 races, and then merging with the Tao of the 10,000 races. Was this the meaning? Or was it just his imagination? Su Yu fell into deep thought. For a moment, he was a bit absent-minded. At this moment, in the ancient god-devouring realm, Big Hairy Ball looked at the sky and fell into deep thought. After a long time, he muttered, "What a strange feeling." Next to him, a little smaller Hairy Ball asked curiously, "Master, what's wrong? Are you still injured?" "No." Big Hairy Ball looked at the sky and mumbled, "I feel that someone is peeking at me, but also like our young man. It's really strange. Forget it, go back to sleep. You'll be fine after a nap." It was a strange feeling. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2408, Chapter 2408, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector L. Chapter 2408, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector L. In the city lord's mansion. Su Yu was in a daze as he looked at little Hairy Ball. He was in a daze. Little Hairy Ball was also looking at him. He was trembling slightly. The fragrance was so fragrant that it was as if he was sick. It was really strange. Little Hairy Ball wanted to go back to sleep and lick the divine runes. However, when he saw Su Yu's dazed look, he was afraid that he would go crazy, so he could only continue to stare at him. The past, blend in. Su Yu muttered and blended in with the myriad races to experience their past. It was not just a simple change of form. He could do it now. He had disguised himself many times. But this time, it was completely different. It was not a disguise on form, but a physical and psychological blend. At that moment it was as if he had really become little Hairy Ball. Civilization. Su Yu muttered again. Was this the function of civilization? To comprehend civilization, to comprehend it with one's body. The will of the 10,000 races. At this moment, Su Yu seemed to have completely understood something. The will of the 10,000 races. When he produced the will of the 10,000 races, this was the birth of the divine text, which fused with one's body. At this moment, Su Yu understood. The will of the 10,000 races, gathering the 10,000 races, fusing the 10,000 races, analyzing the 10,000 races civilization. Only then can one become a true civilization master, the recorder of civilization. That's right, he suddenly had a definition and a name, the record of civilization. Every era should have a record of civilization. Civilization was disappearing. Races were exterminating. In the Great War of the Heavens, one race after another was exterminated, one race after another disappeared in the long river of history. Some did not leave behind a single word, while some smaller races had long been unknown. Explore civilization, explore the unknown, search for civilization, and analyze civilization. At this moment, Su Yu suddenly had a feeling of enlightenment. I do not want to be a civilization master, but a civilization chronicler. The Golden Atlas, may also be the annals of all races, may be a civilization chronicler of the previous era. Su Yu muttered in his heart, is that so? At this moment, he suddenly had this thought. This thought, the Golden Atlas might not be a divine text. Of course, this was hard to say now, but he felt that the person who made this atlas might be the same as him. He was recording civilization. Those extinct races and cultivation techniques were all recorded. It was just that Suyu might not have encountered them and did not open them. There were definitely many pages in the Golden Atlas that Suyu had not opened. However, why did he choose me as his successor? Suyu did not understand. At this moment, he had an epiphany that he might be the successor of the civilization recorder. The atlas was not simply for Suyu to learn cultivation techniques, but to pass down an occupation. The occupation that Suyu named civilization recorder. In ancient times, was there such a profession? Suyu thought, quickly stood up and walked towards the back hall. Back hall. Xinghong had just settled down and had just closed his eyes when Suyu came. He kicked Lu Hong, who was at the door, away. Lu Hong could not help but curse loudly, "Suyu, you've gone too far. I'll just stand at the door for a while, and you'll kick me." Boom. The door closed, and Suyu completely ignored him. Lu Hong, this fellow, had been frequently running to the back hall recently, so he had to get Xingyu to keep an eye on him. He closed the door, bowed slightly, and said hesitantly, "Sir, I want to ask a question. I hope that sir can answer my doubts." "Speak." Suyu thought for a moment and said, "Sir, in ancient times, was there such a person who recorded the civilizations of the myriad races, recorded their auras, cultivation techniques, races, civilizations, habits, innate skills?" Xinghong suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Suyu. Suyu also looked at Xinghong. Xinghong's petrified brows suddenly frowned. After a long time, he said, "There are many people who recorded these. What kind of records do you?" Suyu explained, "Deep records. They even analyzed their cultivation methods and converted them into the kind that they can cultivate." Xinghong was silent for a moment before saying, "I don't know. Perhaps there is." Suyu was surprised. "You don't know?" Just as Xinghong was about to say something, someone below suddenly asked, "You mean, Shi Guangshi?" This time around, Suyu was stunned as he asked hurriedly, "Does Lord Xingyu know?" "No." Xingyu replied casually before replying after a long while, "But I seem to have heard of it before, but I can't remember it clearly." Xinghong interjected, "Her memory is incomplete, so she might not remember it." "But, Time Master Xingyu, are you sure that there were such civilized masters in the ancient times?" Hearing that, he knew that there were such civilized masters in the ancient times. Were there such civilized masters in the ancient times? Xinghong was not too sure, as he did not know much. At that moment, he hesitated for a moment and said, "In the ancient times, 100 flowers bloomed and 10,000 paths contended. There were all kinds of civilized masters, but I'm not too sure about what you said." Xingyu said, "I don't know much either. It's just that when I heard what you said just now, I subconsciously thought of this word, Time Master or Time Traveler. Someone might have mentioned it to me when I was alive." Suyu nodded slightly. At this moment, he was no longer conflicted. Instead, he asked curiously, "Lord Xingyu, could it be that you were also an important figure in the ancient times when you were alive? To be able to become invincible, you might have been invincible when you were alive. You were definitely not weak. In the ancient era, you should be someone with a name." However, Xingyue was too lazy to reply and ignored him. Suyu smiled and said, "Lord Xingyue, you don't have to be so hostile towards me. To be honest, I have protected you from harm several times. Today, on the human side, they told me that they could help me kill you, but I didn't agree. My lord, I am loyal to you." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2409, Chapter 2409, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 2. Chapter 2409, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 2. Xingyue said angrily, "Come and try to kill me. PM a great sovereign, is it so easy to kill me? This is too much." Suyu hurriedly smiled and said, "Sir, you misunderstood. I didn't mean that. It's too late for me to protect you. I just want to say that I'm one with you. You and I are related by interests. We're family, so you don't have to be hostile to me all the time." "Sir, don't you think so?" Xingyue snorted coldly. After a while, she said coldly, "Suyu, I'm not afraid of you. I don't believe that you can really suck me dry. Sooner or later, PLL turn you into a dead spirit. Even if I can't, you'll die sooner or later. You've offended too many powerful people." Suyu laughed and said, "Sir, you're right. If I die, I'll die. PM not too worried. If I die, PLL be your subordinate and help you unify the dead spirit world. Sir, you don't know that I've even prepared the fruit of life and death. I'm just waiting to recover my memory and explore the dead spirit world with you." Fruit of life and death. Xingyue was stunned for a moment. After a long while, she did not know whether she was helpless, broke down, or mad. She said angrily, "Who gave you the fruit of life and death? I hate that you still remember everything after you die. Even after death, there were still some memories. Suyu must be very annoying. Very annoying." Xingyue was furious. Under her anger, she instantly became silent. She did not want to say anything more to Suyu. Every time she spoke to Suyu, she would be very angry, very angry. Xingyue disappeared. Xinghong could not help but laugh. "You have the matter of the life and death consequences. Tell her what to do." Suyu smiled and said, "This way, she won't expect me to die so that she won't cause trouble for me. Even if I die, this Lord Monarch will have to bear the trouble that I have brought her." Of course, at that time, Xingyue would be able to deal with Suyu. However, was she willing to give up on the undead that she had spent so much effort to convert? It would be troublesome if she were to mention it to Xingyue just in case she were to set him up at a critical moment. After all, Suyu had been converted by her. It was not as if Xingyue was completely unable to restrain Suyu. Without saying anything more to Xinghong, Suyu walked out of the back hall and silently memorized the word that Xingyue had mentioned, Time Master, Time Traveler. No, if that was the case, Suyu would prefer to call it the Chronicler of Civilization. It was even more artistic. Did such a job really exist in the ancient times? Xinghong did not even know. Either Xinghong's level was low, or the other party was just a small fry. However, if the Golden Atlas was really as he had guessed, Suyu felt that Xinghong's level might be low. After all, in the ancient times, Xinghong and the others might not be weak, but their status might not be the highest. Walking out of the back hall, Lu Hong saw him and cursed as he avoided him. As Suyu walked, he was thinking when suddenly, he turned to look at him and said, "Teacher Lu, I hope that you can behave yourself. Recently, I saw that you have been wandering around the back hall and even started hooking up with Xingyue. Could it be that you are planning to go to the death spirit world to develop?" Suyu said faintly, "Teacher, I won't stop you from going to the world of the dead. Don't give me any trouble. Help me complete what I want you to do. Everything is negotiable, but if you ruin my business, teacher, do you believe that even if you're in the world of the dead, PLL find you sooner or later and kill you?" Lu Hong laughed dryly. "How can that be? I'm a living person. Why would I go to the world of the dead?" "Suyu, you've misunderstood." "I hope so." Suyu said calmly, "Whether it's living beings or dead spirits, as long as I have wisdom, it's the same. It's just that their external appearance and strength are different. I don't care about these. I hope that teacher can be a little more obedient. At the very least, we'll talk about it after I leave the Xinyu residence." Of course, of course. Lord Xinghong is here. how would I dare to cause trouble? Su Yu said indifferently, is that so? If the 10,000 races came and Master Xing Hong went out and returned after a great battle, perhaps, teacher, you would disappear. I don't care about these things, but wait for me to come out first. If teacher thinks that he can escape, then let's give it a try. Su Yu sneered, I feel that I have learned a lot from teacher's methods. But teacher, don't worry. I will put some restrictions on teacher. Lu Hong smiled sheepishly. Su Yu ignored him and walked away. After he left, Lu Hong's smile disappeared. Helplessly, this fellow was only 20 years old. Why did he feel that he was getting more and more strange? It was as if he had seen through the mortal world. Was he going against the heavens? Su Yu didn't care much about Lu Hong. As long as he didn't ruin his own matters, he didn't care about Lu Hong's schemes. Xing Hong would keep an eye on him, Elder Wang, and Elder Bai would keep an eye on him. With so many people keeping an eye on him, he was still able to destroy it. At this moment, Su Yu was preparing to use this month to officially forge a weapon for himself, the will of 10,000 clans. His forging methods had already reached the earth rank. However, he was still far from being able to forge a powerful weapon. Su Yu knew many powerful weapon forging masters, but the one he trusted the most was naturally Zhao Li. He hadn't seen Zhao Li for a long time, and Zhao Li hadn't participated in the last battle. He must have been hidden by the Xia family. An Earth-grade weapon forging master, and not just any Earth-grade weapon forging master. The Xia family could not bear to let such a civilized master participate in the battle. It was too extravagant and too wasteful. Zhao Li was able to forge the embryonic form of a heavenly weapon, even though it was not a heavenly weapon. However, as long as there was enough time, Zhao Li would be able to advance to a heavenly weapon master sooner or later. I need teacher's help. Su Yu muttered. He was counting on himself to forge an earth soldier. That would be too trashy. What Su Yu needed was at least a heavenly soldier. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2410, Chapter 2410, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 3. Chapter 2410, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 3. It would be best if it was the embryo type. In the future, he could continue to improve. Back then, his first literary weapon was the embryo, and he had not gone deep into forging. However, Su Yu's strength had advanced too quickly, and that embryo could no longer satisfy his needs. The current Su Yu was much more powerful than he was back then. Moreover, Su Yu was thinking about a problem. Body 72 casting. Forging might allow him to advance faster. Once he advanced and completed the 72 casting, Su Yu might step into Ling Yun. After all, he had already completed the transformation of his 144 apertures. If he made a breakthrough during the forging process, it might help him to forge and make the weapon stronger. It was better to forge the weapon himself. Especially for the will of the 10,000 clans, he needed to do it himself. Thinking of this, Su Yu suddenly sent a voice transmission to the outside, Elder Wang, contact Lu City. Ask Lu City to help me contact the human realm. I hope that teacher Zhao Li can come to the ancient city. Saying that, Su Yu quickly said, when teacher Zhao arrives at the heavenly battlefield, I will ask the guardian to pick him up. Ask teacher not to come alone to avoid trouble. Zhao Li had the hope of advancing to the Heavenly Soldier Division, and he was one of the targets that the 10,000 races wanted to kill. The Heavenly Soldier Division could forge weapons for the invincible. The key was that the heavenly weapons forged by the Heavenly Soldier Division could be used as carrying objects. Turning something rotten into something magical. Some individual materials might not be able to be used as carrying objects, but once they were forged into weapons, it was possible because the weapons were powerful enough. For example, this time, Su Yu had exchanged a lot of materials for the quota. It was enough to forge 2 or 3 celestial weapons, but these materials could not be exchanged for a single carrier. That was impossible. However, once it was forged into a celestial weapon, it could be used as 2 carriers. On the human side, the existence of the heaven-cast king had actually provided many celestial weapons for the human race to use as carriers. However, even the materials needed to forge a celestial weapon could not be collected so easily. Suyu had already thought it through. He would use the forging opportunity to upgrade his physical body and officially enter the Lingyun stage. Complete Body 72 Casting. Human Realm. Great Xia Civilization Academy. Currently, Zhao Li was the second deputy prefect of the Civilization Academy. With the 3 great academies united, the Civilization Academy had barely recovered to its previous strength. Zhao Lp's strength was not considered strong. Even though he had entered the mountain and sea realm previously and had improved rapidly, after years of suppression, this burst of strength had only allowed him to enter the 4th level of the mountain and sea realm. He did not continue to advance, but instead continued to suppress. The God-expanding hammer was still very useful in suppressing the will of the weak. Recently, Zhao Li had a vague feeling that he had dropped to the 3rd level of the mountain and sea realm. However, dropping a level didn't affect him too much. On the contrary, it was a good thing. He didn't care about his level. Even if he dropped to the 3rd level of the mountain and sea realm, it didn't mean that he was weak. On the contrary, he would be stronger. As for his hammer, the divine prose and the hammer had become one. The hammer had also been strengthening recently. If the hammer was strong, he would be strong. That was because his main divine prose was in it. At this moment, Zhao Li was still a little unhappy that the hammer was improving too quickly, resulting in him improving too quickly. His willpower was very weak. For a weapon forging master, their control over their willpower was too low, and it wasn't suitable for them to forge. A weapon forging master needed to have an extremely strong control over their own willpower. With the 3 great academies merging into one, the weapon forging department had become much stronger. Furthermore, Zhao Lp's previous weapon forging had caused a huge commotion. Even Invincible had come, and he had advanced to the Earth Weapon Division. His status was extremely high, and even though he had become the deputy prefect, not many people felt that it was inappropriate. At this moment, many people were learning from him. This included some old fellows who often came to learn from him. As for Zhao Li's bad temper, he was famous for it. In the weapon forging room, Zhao Li looked at the group of people forging weapons. He couldn't help but curse, "Stupid, too stupid. You guys are the only ones who are still forging weapons. Forging weapons, are you treating them as toys? How many times have I taught you that you can't use this method? Are you still using it? Did I say that it's useless?" At the side, an old man sighed, "Old Zhao, it's not that you said it's useless. It's just that it's hard for them to reach that stage. Their control isn't strong, and it's easy for them to destroy their weapons. Even if they destroy it, it's still better than now." Zhao Li said angrily, "A bunch of people who just muddle along. They don't even have the ideal of pursuing high-quality products. They just want to forge a few more golden patterns. They have never considered it at all. No matter how high the level of the weapon you forge is, it's still for others to use. If it's not suitable for use, then it's better to use low-grade weapons. Even using your fists is better than this." A student who was forging couldn't help but whisper, "Principal, we've worked hard, but the time we've spent learning is too short." Is it still short?" Zhao Li ridiculed, "It's already been half a year, and it's still short. PvE only taught that fellow Suyu a few times, and he was able to learn it after just one look. Yet, all of you, he's already in Earth Armament Division, and all of you can't even forge a yellow weapon." The crowd was speechless. "Are you old enough? You keep comparing that fellow over and over again. It would be weird if you don't dislike him. That fellow is a monster. We aren't. Su Yu quickly advanced to Quasi-Earth Division. Although he hasn't officially forged an Earth soldier yet, everyone felt that he would definitely be able to do it now. He's a 20-year-old Earth Division, what's there to compare with? Zhao Li was helpless as well. It was true that he couldn't compare. However, after witnessing the forging techniques of geniuses and looking at these mediocre talents, he felt extremely vexed. He had taught them a matter dozens of times, but they still couldn't do it. He was still unable to control it. How infuriating. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2411, Chapter 2411, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 4. Chapter 2411, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 4. It had been many years since he last brought students along. Now that he was bringing students along, he realized that he had a bad temper. In the past, he could still teach them slowly. But now, he really didn't have the patience. The main reason was that these fellows were too infuriating. Every time he forged a weapon, there would be countless loopholes, making him extremely tired. He really wanted to quit this job. Just as he was thinking about this, the door to the forging room was pushed open. Just as Zhao Li was about to fly into a rage, Ji Hong chuckled and said, "Old Zhao, are you throwing a tantrum again?" "No." Zhao Li casually cupped his fists and said sullenly, "The director is here." "What's the matter?" "There's a small matter." "Su Yu." "Oh. What's wrong with Su Yu? Look at you. You're already so old, yet you still can't control your temper." Ji Hong laughed and walked out. Old Zhao hurriedly followed him and waited for him to exit the forging room. Only then did Ji Hong say, "Ji Hong asked someone to send you a message. He wants you to make a trip to ancient Starred City. He seems to want to forge his own civil weapons, but he's worried that he's not strong enough to forge his own weapons. He wants you to help him." "Forge weapons?" Zhao Li was stunned for a moment before saying, "He's forging weapons now. His strength lies in his physical body. Forging weapons is also forging martial weapons. With this kid's strength, even though I haven't paid much attention to him recently, he should be able to forge ordinary earth weapons. Could it be that he wants to forge intermediate or even advanced earth weapons? PM not sure about that. Old Zhao, do you want to go?" "Of course." Zhao Li chuckled and said, "I haven't seen that kid for a long time. I'll go and take a look. This fellow doesn't look like a civilized master at all, nor does he look like a weapon-forging master. I heard that he uses his fists when he fights, boorish." Ji Hong could not help but laugh. The other party's body was powerful, comparable to the sun and moon. Of course, it was better to use his fists. Zhao Li could not wait to say, "Then I'll go right now. This kid finally wants to seriously forge a weapon for himself. How rare. To think that he still remembers that he's a weapon-forging master. Sorry, he really might not remember. It just so happened that he was going to forge a weapon. Moreover, did anyone in the myriad clans care that Su Yu was a weapon forger? No one cared at all. Very soon, old Zhao set off. It was still more comfortable forging weapons with Su Yu. In the academy, he had to bring these noobs every day. He was going crazy. If he were to go to Su Yu's place, he would at least have to forge an earth soldier. That fellow probably wanted to forge a decent earth soldier. Otherwise, he wouldn't have specially gotten someone to call him. Coincidentally, he would also have to test that fellow's weapon forging skills. Don't forget, Su Yu's official occupation was a weapon forger, it's registered. Even the divine scribes of the many divine languages department haven't been certified. Time passed day by day. There were still over 20 days before the Starry Manor would officially report for duty. At the very least, they would have to enter the inner regions first. Thus, in these few days, there were more and more people in the ancient city. Outside the ancient city, ships were docked one after another. There was no other way, the continent was gone. The 9 realms had tried to rebuild the continent a few times and reclaimed the sea to rebuild the 9-star island. In the end, it was better not to mention it. Now, the 9 realms had given up completely. Forget it. Everyone wanted to come out and rest. It was better to dock on the ships. The ships were also very big. Incomparably huge. They were all treasure ships. This time, the 9 realms did not build a continent. They had built many treasure ships and connected them together. In fact, it was similar to the continent. It provided a resting place for the experts and geniuses who came and went. After all, the ancient city could not stay for long. If they didn't come out within 7 days, their lives would be in danger. The ancient city of Stellar City had also become a floating city. The 9 realms circled around, and the ships circled around, adding some color to the ancient city of Stellar City. The ancient city of Stellar City was also the closest resting place to the Starry Palace. Further ahead was the sealed area of the various races. Right now, they weren't allowed to enter or leave. Recently, the Starry Palace had been shaken, and treasures flowed out from time to time. All of them had been snatched away by those sealed people, causing small battles to occur there. Large waves frequently slammed into this place. Both inside and outside the ancient city, it was filled with people. Previously, no one dared to come. Later on, they discovered that Suyu had not sealed the city for a long time. He did not care too much about everyone entering the ancient city. He only collected some yuan qi liquid. This made many people feel at ease as they rushed over. Just as the group was discussing the starry manor, the void suddenly shook. A stone sculpture appeared. Below, everyone held their breaths. Recently, this stone sculpture had been going in and out quite frequently. This kind of ancient invincibility hadn't left the city for countless years, but now, it was fine. It would go out once in a while, causing all the clans to have no choice but to keep an eye on it, afraid of what would happen to these stone sculptures. And this time, the stone sculpture didn't appear alone. There was an old man beside him. Zhao Li looked down and sighed. He hadn't come to the Sea of Stars for many years. When he was young, he had been here a few times when he was middle-aged. Later on, when the weapon forging failed, he came less often. During the years when the weapon forging failed, he had been thinking and reflecting. In addition, the weapon forging was too busy, so he rarely stepped into the heavenly battlefield. He came less often, and some people didn't know him. However, there were still some elders who remembered him. When they saw Zhao Li, someone said in surprise, "Zhao Li. Why is he here? Who is Zhao Li?" The crowd was slightly excited. The stone statue had personally brought him back. Could he be an important figure of the human race? Zhao Li doesn't know. Do you know his father, Zhao Sanhammer? The 4th generation head of the Great Xia Civilization Academy. The Great Xia Civilization Academy. None of the successive heads of the academy are simple. Someone sighed. When it came to Myriad Heaven Saint, he was the 6th generation head of the academy. Myriad Heaven Saint was the 6th generation head of the academy, and the 6th generation head of the academy was probably the most controversial generation as well as the 5th generation head of the academy. Now, the Great Xia Civilization Academy no longer had a 7th generation head of the academy. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2412, Chapter 2412, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 5. Chapter 2412, Chapter 521 Corpse Collector 5. 549690339. Ji Hong was only a temporary generation. Perhaps Xia Longwu felt that no one could be called the 7th generation, so he didn't set up a principle. The first generation Xia Chen created the multi-divine text. The second generation imperial beast technique was incomparably powerful, subduing the giant dragon. The third generation was invincible in the Tao, transforming into mystic armor. The fourth generation was unparalleled in the forging of weapons, and was also incomparably powerful. The fifth and sixth generations were all fierce people who could kill invincible people. Each generation was stronger than the last. Now, who in the great Xia mansion could bear the title of the seventh generation? Unless Xia Longwu himself was more or less the same. When they heard that it was Zhao Sanhammer's son, many people immediately remembered. Someone said in surprise, "So it's him. He's also a genius of the human race who has a high chance of advancing to the divine weapon master level." I remember that Su, the city lord, is also a weapon forging master. Was he the one who taught him? Yes, it's him. The guardian went to pick him up personally. Could it be that he wants to become a divine armament master? That might be the case. The group of living beings discussed animatedly. Su Yu's strength caused everyone to overlook his identity as a divine armament master. An earth armament master was rare even in the heavenly battlefield. On the heavenly battlefield, the number of earth armament masters might not necessarily be invincible. Heaven weapon forging masters were even rarer. There was only one heaven forging king in the entire human race. There were gods, devils, and immortals, but there weren't many. Some had one or two, while others were like immortals. There were only 4 heaven weapon forging masters. In the entire universe, the number of heaven weapon forging masters was extremely rare. At this moment, Zhao Lp's arrival caused many people to discuss whether Su Yu was going to forge weapons or not. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used the stone sculpture to fetch him. The news also spread very quickly. Right now, Su Yu's every move had many people paying attention to it. Just as everyone was paying attention to it. At the entrance of the city lord's manor, Su Yu bowed to the end with a smile on his face. "Teacher." Zhao Li landed on the ground and bowed slightly to the stone sculpture. After Xing Hong disappeared, he looked at Su Yu with a straight face and said calmly, "City Lord Su, long time no see." Su Yu hurriedly smiled and said, "Teacher, don't joke. In front of you, I am not some city lord." Zhao Li snorted coldly and said, "Is that so? I thought you had long forgotten that you are still a member of the weapon forging department." "I don't dare, but I can't either." Su Yu smiled and went forward. He chuckled and said, "Teacher has been promoted to deputy head. I didn't even have the time to congratulate you." Zhao Li scoffed and was too lazy to reply. He looked around and felt the aura of death. He gently exhaled and said, "The ancient city is pretty good. Other than having more aura of death, it's actually a good place to do research. Unfortunately, you might not have the mood to do it now." "No, teacher, I still want to do it." Su Yu smiled and said, "Actually, from the very beginning, I chose the civilized university because I wanted to do research. Unfortunately, there were always people who forced me to turn from a scholarly scholar into an executioner. It was the truth, but unfortunately, no one believed it." Su Yu's goal from the very beginning was the civilized university. At that time, he didn't even know that civilized masters could fight. He only thought that they were purely civilized researchers. Later on, he found out that civilized masters could also fight. Fighting was not his original intention. When he was young, before he entered the university, his only goal was to research the source of his nightmares. Later on, he also wanted to study the Atlas. Unfortunately, things backfired. The current Su Yu. Probably no one thought that he was a true civilized master. Zhao Li was also amused by him. "You killed an embryo, killed dozens of suns and moons, and even killed a few invincible ones. You say you're a researcher? Studying how to collect corpses?" Su Yu laughed and said, "Teacher, you're really right this time. I've troubled you to come here because of this. I want to be a corpse collector. Suyu laughed heartily and said, Teacher, is there a profession among civilized masters like corpse collectors? Zhao Li looked at him and asked in surprise, Are you serious? Yes. Zhao Li stroked his beard but didn't question anything. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Corpse collection, is related to the weapon you want to forge? Yes, I want to forge a book, or something similar to a book. I want to record things and collect some things. It can be considered as my Dao. Zhao Lp's face changed slightly, Are you sure? The path of a civilized master wasn't a joke. If he decided on this path and it suited him, perhaps he wouldn't be able to change it anymore. For example, that madman Lan Tian had walked from the transformation department to his current insane state. This could also be considered as his path. On the other hand, I have walked from the weapon forging department to the path of man and soldier as one. This can also be considered as a small path, and it's hard to turn back now. You are still young, yet you want to seal your future. Suyu smiled and said, I guess so. You. Zhao Li shook his head, very quickly, he said, It's up to you. This thing still has to depend on yourself. The same faction, but different paths, it's all normal. Let's go in and talk about your requirements. What kind of weapon do you want to forge, what characteristics do you need, and what functions do you have? Suyu did not stand on ceremony with Zhao Li and said directly, the kind that can hold an invincible corpse. With just this sentence, Zhao Li stopped in his tracks. He turned to look at Suyu and turned to leave. PM done. Go and try with Tianzhu Wang. F*CK, are you kidding me? Suyu was speechless. I haven't even said that I want to accommodate a half-emperor corpse. PvE already said that I want to be a corpse collector. It wouldn't be too much to accept a half-emperor corpse, right? With teacher's temper, at least talk to me. Suyu hurriedly said, Teacher, how can the Heaven-Casting King's forging technique compare to our Zhao clan's weapon forging technique? Moreover, I'm not familiar with him. PM your disciple, right? Zhao Li turned around and left. That was just his intention. At this moment, he couldn't help but curse, You're treating me as a heaven armament division? What kind of joke is this? Your so-called storage I sent just purely a storage space, right? The difficulty is much greater than imagined. Are you sure that we can forge it? The prototype will do too. Suyu hurriedly said, The embryo will do. Teacher, I don't expect to successfully forge it now. We'll take it slowly in the future. Only then did Zhao Li feel relieved and nodded slightly, Don't be too ambitious. Go in and tell me in detail about your thoughts, ideas, including the performance of the blueprints and so on. I knew it. Kid, you called me here not to forge an ordinary weapon, but to forge an ordinary weapon, I might not even come. Suyu chuckled. Of course, it was not ordinary. If it really was an ordinary earth soldier, Suyu would be able to forge it himself. Soon, the master and disciple entered the city lord's mansion. Zhao Li also saw Lu Hong. The first thing he said was, This guy is here. Kill him or get lost as soon as possible. This kid hasn't done many good things. Lu Hong, who originally wanted to say hello, instantly ran away. Forget it, he couldn't afford to offend him. This man had a bad temper. If he did not beat himself to death, there would be no way to reason with him. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2413, Chapter 2413, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers L. Chapter 2413, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers L. In the city lord's main hall. Zhao Li did not waste any time. He sat down cross-legged and asked, Do you have the blueprint drawn? Suyu shook his head. I haven't confirmed the exact shape of it yet. The general idea is that it's a book type. You don't deserve it. Su Yu stared at him in a daze. Teacher, these words are a little piercing. Zhao Li said impolitely, your Tao is not a book. Remember. You are using the name of a book to do unrighteous things. In my opinion, it is better to forge it into a knife, sword, axe, fork, and so on. That won't do. That doesn't match my temperament. Su Yu shook his head and refused. His body changed. His white clothes were as white as snow. With his hands behind his back, he looked up at the starry sky. He said, Teacher, it's not appropriate for me to hold a knife like this, right? I have to hold a book. Moreover, I have vast knowledge. Just based on cultivation techniques alone, I know thousands of cultivation techniques. Zhao Li glanced at him and knew that he was a show-off. Since Su Yu insisted on wanting a book, he was too lazy to say anything. He said, creating a book-type weapon will be much more difficult. Actually, it's best to forge a knife, spear, sword, and halberd. Even special weapons have difficulty. Su Yu nodded. The difficulty would definitely be high. Zhao Li looked at him and asked, any other requests? Su Yu pondered for a moment and said, first, you must stabilize it. This is a must. It's best to bring some space with you. 1 page, 1 space, his heart was tired. Zhao Li cursed silently. If I die, this thing won't be easy to create. The difficulty is too high. Then how many pages are you planning to create? 10,000 pages. Get lost. Zhao Li directly cursed, do you only know how to make demands with your mouth? 10,000 pages. What a joke. It's equivalent to 10,000 small spaces. If you fuse it together, it would have to be extremely stable. Do you know how difficult it is? If this thing is really forged, then it's not an earth soldier, it's a divine weapon. Zhao Li cursed for a while, but very quickly. He frowned and said, if you want to forge this weapon and use it as your Tao weapon, then it's best to walk the path of fusing divine weapons. You might want to fuse divine runes into it. Have you considered it? Otherwise, simply forging a weapon isn't considered a Tao weapon. Su Yu nodded. PvE considered it. 2 divine runes. Naturally, Su Yu had his own considerations in forging this weapon. He was prepared to integrate the word civilization into it. He would collect the corpse and integrate it into the civilization. LD Zhao did not say much, he said hesitantly, how about this? I don't have the ability to forge 10,000 pages, not even Tianzhu King can do it. Try forging 100 pages first. It's only a half-finished product, an embryonic form. Later on, you can supplement it as your strength increases. Slowly perfect it. Or you can simply forge a 10-page one. The difficulty is lower. As he said that, Zhao Li said in a deep voice, what other requirements do you have? Say them all at once. Su Yu calculated for a moment and said, for each page, I need to create a different level of space. Based on the weight of 1,000 tons, 10,000 stones, soaring sky, Ling Yun, mountains and seas, sun and moon, eternity. Zhao Lp's head was as big as an ox. You want my old life? I really can't do this. The more Su Yu said, the more difficult he felt. He couldn't help but frown and say, this is not something that you and I can create. If you and I work together to create a medium-grade or high-grade earth weapon, that would be the limit. It would be difficult to create a peak-grade earth weapon, but these requirements that you put forward can only be done by a divine weapon division or even a divine weapon division. Kid, do you think PM a divine weapon division? Su Yu laughed dryly. Old Zhao hesitated. How about this? If it doesn't work, PLL find someone to ask Xiao Tianbing for help. He's a peak earth soldier division. If you don't want him to know everything, you can let him be in charge of a portion of the content, including the integration and cutting of space. But cutting space. PM afraid he won't be able to do it. Suyu thought for a moment and said, Dean Hu Xianxing from Daming. Manor can do it. Can you call him over? Suyu nodded. It's not a big problem. He lacks money to build a spatial portal. I happen to lack everything, so I don't lack money. I can hire him. That's doable. Zhao Li sighed. You brat, you're too ambitious. What you want to build is not an earth soldier. You're not even preparing for the embryonic form of a heaven soldier. You're going for a heaven soldier. In today's world, if we want to talk about divine weapons, perhaps only the heaven hunting role can do it. With just the few of us, not to mention that we can't forge a divine weapon, the most important thing is that you can't even afford the resources and funds we. Suyu smiled and said, I don't have such thoughts. However, if we can become a divine weapon in the future, it will be a matter of the future. At that time, teacher and I will be able to leave a huge mark in the history of weapon forging. Zhao Li could not be bothered with him. He took a deep breath and was slightly excited. Suddenly, he said, if my father were here, PM afraid he would be very excited. Forget it, he's not here anymore. Suyu, you and I are not enough. Calling my senior brother might not even be enough. Have you considered calling Yunchen for help? Yunchen. Suyu was stunned for a moment. Zhao Li nodded and said, the human race has 3 peak earth weapon divisions. One is my senior brother, the other is Tian Zhu Wang's eldest disciple Tai Ji, and the other is the original cult master, which is also Yun Chen. Suyu seemed to have heard someone mention this before. At this moment, he asked in surprise, how could Yun Chen be a peak earth weapon division? It was fine if he didn't know it before, but now that he knew that the primordial sect master was Yun Chen, Suyu was still very surprised. Zhao Li wasn't surprised at all, he and my father are from the same generation, so their relationship isn't too bad. He was about the same as you, and during that period, he had many kinds of abilities. After the 3rd generation disappeared, my father took over the academy. Yun Chen was then the academy's dean of divine arts. During that period, he should have learned some weapon forging techniques from my father. Strictly speaking, he could be considered a weapon forging division of the Zhao family. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 24:14, Chapter 24:14, Chapter 5:22, Inviting Helpers 2. Chapter 24:14, Chapter 5:22, Inviting Helpers 2. Suyu was speechless. The Zhao family's weapon forging techniques were really amazing. Zhao Tianbing was at the peak of the Earth Weapons Division, and so was Yun Chen. Old Zhao was probably able to forge medium-grade Earth-grade weapons, but he didn't know how high-grade they were. Out of the 3 peak Earth Weapons divisions of the human race, the Zhao family had 2. Although the Tianzhu King was a Heaven Weapons division, he had only taught 1. If he didn't die in 4 generations, he would probably be the 2nd Heaven Weapons division. Zhao Li continued, before his identity was exposed, I didn't think too much about it. Now that I think about it, some of the powerful weapons used by the 10,000 clans still have some traces of the Zhao clan, but they are very few. Yun Chen has probably learned the divine armament forging techniques before, so he can be considered to have gathered the strengths of the 100 clans. Suyu nodded. Zhao Li asked, shall we invite him? We aren't familiar with the Tianzhu King, Yun Chen. You aren't too familiar with him, but PM alright. If we calculate it, Lu Wenyan from Yi Beishan's generation has to address him as senior uncle. He's in the heavenly battlefield. If we really invite him, he should be able to come. Suyu hesitated for a moment. Zhao Li said indifferently, I know what you're thinking. There's no need to be too harsh on him. The original cult master has always been active in the human realm, and his identity is hidden. There are some things that he might not be able to know in advance. Including the third generation, the heaven-hunting pavilion has been expelled by the human race. There are some things that he might not be able to know and can interject. Suyu smiled and said, "Teacher, I don't mind, but forget it. This matter isn't just my problem. My teacher and the others can't get over this hurdle, including Mansion Nyaster Wan. Myriad Sage." Zhao Li shook his head and sighed, "That's true. Yun Chen can be considered his master. Myriad Sage didn't even speak to him when he left. I'm afraid he can't get over that hurdle in his heart." When Wan Tianxing left, including when his identity as the original cult master was exposed, he didn't even glance at him and didn't say a single word. It could be seen that Wan Tianxing was still filled with repulsion and dissatisfaction towards his eldest senior brother. "It's fine if you don't look for Yun Chen, but you can look for the Daming Manor to borrow a few earth weapon masters." Zhao Li said once more, "Brat, this is really a huge project. If it's just the two of us, just the construction and extraction won't take a day or two. The materials you prepared have to be good. The better the materials, the harder it will be to extract them. This thing is not an earth armament division. Even extracting it is difficult. It is not even qualified to be a handyman." When these words were said, Suyu was speechless. This was too exaggerated. Even a handyman would have an earth armament division. How could it be so exaggerated? He took out his own materials and showed them to Zhao Li. Zhao Li looked at them for a while and was speechless. F***CKU. These were all used to forge heaven weapons. He was right. If it was not an earth armament division, it would really be difficult to extract them. "You're doing this for the heavenly weapons. I can't do it with you. If you want to forge them, then hurry up and shake them." Suyu did not expect old Zhao to give such a suggestion. 2 earth weapons divisions were not enough. 3 or 5 were not enough. He had to shout more. The key was that Suyu still wanted to forge it within a month. That would be even more difficult. Someone had to be in charge of cutting the space. Hu Xiansheng was suitable for this. After hesitating for a moment, Suyu nodded. "All right, I'll listen to teacher. I'll invite some people to help me. Teacher and I will do the main work. The others can help us out." In terms of trust, it was best to trust old Zhao. The others, even Hu Qi from Daming Prefecture, did not distrust him. The main point was that it was best not to let too many people know about the secrets of his army, especially Suyu's. It was even worse. The ancient city's aura of death is too strong. PM afraid of interference. Old Zhao spoke again, but Suyu didn't seem to mind. "It's fine. PLL fill the city lord's manor with heavenly yuan qi. A large amount of heavenly yuan qi is even more than the ancient ruins. This way, the aura of death won't be able to invade, but it can help everyone recover quickly." This wasn't a problem. Suyu didn't lack heavenly yuan qi. Moreover, he had to prepare some treasures to recover everyone's willpower. Suyu had some. Forging weapons could not be done without sufficient treasures to recover willpower. Suyu was not old Zhao. Thinking of this, Suyu quickly said, "Teacher, this time, it can't be like last time. We prepared too little, and almost failed. Willpower can't be recovered, and even a few broken sun-moon divine runes are not enough. I still have to sketch the divine runes at the last minute." Zhao Li's face flushed red. King said that PM too poor and can't afford to prepare these things, then it's over. Where did all this nonsense come from? Suyu coughed dryly and quickly said, "This time, we have to be fully prepared. We have to consider everything, including the success of the forging and the possibility of facing a disaster. Last time, old Zhao had encountered it. This time, he couldn't encounter it. It was not a disaster. The last time was actually a phenomenon, but a reward. The key was that the timing of the reward was not right. At that time, the reward had caused the civil weapon to become stronger, and the difficulty of forging it had increased greatly. Old Zhao had almost been cheated to death. This time, he did not know what kind of situation he would encounter. Zhao Li nodded. According to your thinking, the weapon forged in the end might be ridiculously powerful. Even if it is not powerful enough, it is still a heavenly weapon or even a divine weapon embryo. Whether it is a reward or a disaster, it needs to be considered thoroughly. After saying that, he asked, then PLL go back and invite that senior brother of mine. No need. Su Yu exhaled and said, although I don't really want to go back, but, since we're inviting him, let's go back and make a trip. The people of Daming Manor can't just call him over with a message. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 24:15, Chapter 24:15, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers 3. Chapter 24:15, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers 3. 549690339. The reason why he called Old Zhao was because it was related to him. All he needed to do was to send a message. However, the others were still lacking by a level. As he spoke, Su Yu smiled and said, Teacher, then I'll invite the commander of the Zhao Heavenly Army Division to the Zhu Tian battlefield right now. Probably. Old Zhao wasn't too sure and quickly said, it's fine. If he comes, he'll be faster than the Daming Division. All right. Su Yu didn't say anything else. Suddenly, the entire ancient city shook, and the huge ancient city instantly disappeared. On the sea of stars, huge waves surged into the sky. The surrounding treasured ships were instantly smashed into pieces by the huge waves. At the city gate, there was a couple. One was outside the city, and the other was outside the city. They were holding hands and talking, but in the blink of an eye, they were gone. A huge gust of wind blew the male demon away. In the next moment, he screamed, Su Yu, where did you take my Dao partner? The surrounding creatures were all blown away by the gust of wind. They were all speechless. Can you say hello before you leave? Many people shouted, my master is still in the city. My grandfather is in the city. Where is he now? All the living beings were speechless. What should they do? Where did Su Yu take them? The experts of the 9 realms sighed again. Damn it, we don't want to build an island anymore. We want to build a treasure ship ring. You destroyed it too. Su Yu is really nothing. Can't you give us a heads up? The ancient city must still be in the heavenly battlefield. They just didn't know where it flew off to. A group of people had their lovers split up and their master and disciple split up. They couldn't help but curse at Su Yu. At the very least, they should have given him a heads up. Right at this moment, in the Eastern Rift Valley, the great Qin King suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, a massive ancient city floated on the top of the Eastern Rift Valley as Su Yu's voice sounded out. Sacred City. Su Yu pays his respects to the invincible humans. Sorry for the disturbance. That huge ancient city stretched between heaven and earth. At this moment, many people saw it from all directions, including from the distant Willow City. Su Yu. He controlled the ancient city and came to the eastern warzone. The great Qin King took a step forward. It was only at this moment that Su Yu saw the great Qin King's appearance clearly for the first time. He was a middle-aged man with a square face. His expression was cold and his long hair was tied up. He was very tall and gave off an extremely powerful aura. He wasn't considered handsome, but he gave off an imposing aura. It was said that before the great Qin King opened his manor, he was an overlord of a region and dominated the human realm. At that time, the human realm was still a feudal dynasty. It was said that the great Qin King was one of those who rebelled against the king. This was something that not many people mentioned. At this moment, the great Qin King's aura shook the heavens. He looked at Su Yu, who was standing on the city gate, and said indifferently, Su Yu, why did you drive the ancient city here? What's the matter? Su Yu coughed dryly and said with a smile, Your Majesty, please don't misunderstand. I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to invite a few people to our sacred city as guests, but I'm afraid that the journey will be dangerous. The great Qin king looked at Zhao Li, who was beside him. He knew that the stone sculpture had taken Zhao Li away before, so who was it now? Su Yu said in a clear voice, Manor Head Niu, are you still here? A moment later, Niu Bendao appeared in a hurry. He seemed to be in a bit of a sorry state, and a low chuckle could be heard from all around. The great Qin king also turned his head and looked at Niu Bendao with a slight frown. He said coldly, You are the mighty eternal. Restrain yourself a little and get rid of the red mark on your face. In the distance, Niu Bendao laughed and the red mark on his face disappeared. Seeing that everyone was still laughing, he also laughed and said, There's no need to be jealous. My wife left it behind, and it wasn't left behind by anyone else. I was just in the heavenly residence, and I rushed here for some reason. As he spoke, he smiled and said, My wife and I have been married for 400 years, and our love is stronger than gold. Everyone doesn't understand. Silence. Niu Bendao chuckled. Look at me as a joke. Look at yourselves as a joke. Only then did he look at Su Yu and asked in surprise, Why are you here? What's the matter? Su Yu smiled and said, Nothing much. I would like to invite Principal Hu, Senior Hu Qi, and a few other earth weapon masters from Daming Manor to our sacred city to discuss the Tao of weapon forging. Oh. Hu Xianqing. What kind of weapon forging Tao does he know? Su Yu explained, Principal Hu is skilled in the Tao of space. The Tao of weapon forging and the Tao of space complement each other. In addition, I might need them to help me consult. I might be able to forge a weapon next time. Niu Bendao nodded and smiled. It's a small matter. I'll immediately inform the manor head and let him make the arrangements. At this moment, someone suddenly said, Su Yu, you want to forge weapons? Can this old man go and observe for a bit? Su Yu looked in that direction. It was a white-haired old man. He was the Tianzhu king. Su Yu said with a smile, Sir, you must be joking. You are a celestial weapon division, and we are just a group of earth weapon divisions. We are just here to join in the fun. How would we dare to trouble you, sir? The Tianzhu king was speechless. If you refuse, then just refuse. What a grand speech. Su Yu had suddenly come to the eastern war zone and invited a group of Earth Division soldiers. He had taken away Zhao Li and some treasures from the 10,000 tribes. Could it be that he was preparing to forge a heavenly weapon? Could it work? Just as he was thinking, Zhao Li said, I have to trouble everyone to inform. Zhao Tianbing of the Great Zhou Manor. Tell him that I'm looking for him. Manor head Zhou Tianbing isn't in seclusion, is he? The person who had appeared was not the great Zhou king, but Zhou Polong. Zhou Polong looked at Zhao Li, then at Su Yu, and nodded slightly. All right, I will help you inform him. He is in the manor, and he will arrive very soon. Then I will trouble you, Manor head Zhou. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 24:16, Chapter 24:16, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers. Chapter 24:16, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers. Zhao Li cupped his hands and didn't say anything else. A moment later, the great Qin king and the others disappeared because Su Yu had nothing to say. They didn't know what to say either, so they all retreated. At this moment, only a few people were left. Niu Bendao was there, but the Tianzhu king didn't leave. He seemed unwilling to give up and wanted to ask if he could participate. Not long after, an old man appeared. It was not Zhao Tianbing, but Nan Wujiang. Nan Wujiang looked at Su Yu in the distance, and Su Yu saw him too. For a moment, the two of them were speechless. Mystic armor. During the time of the Heaven Hunting Pavilion's operation, Su Yu and mystic armor were inseparable. They often joked with each other, and their relationship was considered friendly. But at this moment, they were speechless. Nan Wujiang glanced at Su Yu and did not say anything. He took out a mask and threw it at Su Yu. He said softly, "This item is the Elder Mask of the Xian Department. In addition, the Xian Department has a minister now. Zhou Tianyuan has left and a new minister of the Xian Department has taken over. Try not to bring this mask out of the city." Su Yu took the mask and looked at him. He said slowly, "Thank you, Elder." Nan Wujiang was speechless. He was only an elder, not great-grandmaster, and not great-grandmaster. After a moment of silence, Nan Wujiang asked, "Yun Chen is a peak Earth-grade armament division. Do you need his help?" "No need, thank you." Nan Wujiang nodded slightly, and his figure gradually disappeared from where he was. Su Yu heard his voice, "I still have a Mystic 3 mask. If you need anything, you can look for me through the mask." Su Yu did not say anything and silently watched him leave. His feelings were slightly complicated. He was still alright. He did not feel much repulsion towards Nan Wujiang and Yun Chen. However, Su Yu felt that the one who could not cross over was probably his teacher, Lu Wenyan. Perhaps, his martial uncle, Chen Yong, would not be able to cross over this hurdle. If he could not hold a grudge, then he would stop dating. After he had left, Niu Bidao walked forward with a smile. He did not enter the city either. He was afraid that the stone statue would hit him. He chuckled and said, "Su Yu, you have invited so many people. Are you preparing to cast a heavenly soldier?" On the other side, Tianzhu King interrupted, "I'm good at this." Su Yu was speechless. Wasn't this old man too enthusiastic? "PVE already said that I don't need any help." Tianzhu King did not mind. He said somewhat helplessly, "Su Yu, did you know? I haven't cast a heavenly weapon in 30 years. Su Yu looked at him and he looked at Su Yu. He sighed and said, "Without the materials to cast a weapon, you only have a reputation." He was saying both in and out of his words, "Hurry up and invite me. If you want to forge weapons, do you want to forge heavenly weapons? Otherwise, why would you invite so many earth weapons divisions? I'm good at it too. 3. I'm the best at forging weapons." Before Su Yu could say anything, Niu Bendao laughed and said, "Old Jew, go do what you need to do. A bunch of kids playing around. Do you really think so? Go and guard the Mystic Armor King as soon as possible. Kill him and you'll have everything. Hurry up." He was older than Su Yu, and he was no younger than Su Yu. After attaining the Tao, they were on equal footing, so there was no need for him to pay too much attention to such matters. The Tianzhu King replied helplessly, "All right, you guys. If you don't use a celestial weapon master, I think you'll regret it sooner or later. Wasting materials isn't a small matter. It's a crime to be too extravagant." With that, he disappeared as well. Niu Bidao smiled and said, "This old fellow, he doesn't have the ability to get these materials himself, so he's jealous of others. Ignore him. Su Yu, you'll have to wait for the heavens. Even if you come over from Daming Lanner quickly, you'll still need some time." Su Yu nodded and quickly said, "Get Principal Hu to bring that spatial cutter. PLL be useful. You want that thing?" Niu Bidao was a little surprised and nodded. "Sure. Old Hu has nothing to do recently. Are you planning to get him to help you cut the space?" "Yes, I have this idea." Su Yu smiled and said, "Manor Head, is the manor still not supportive of Dean Hu's spatial teleportation research? I feel that it's pretty awesome. Didn't I teleport you to the battlefield in an instant last time? Don't mention it. Niu Baidao shook his head and said, "I'm so dizzy from being teleported. An ordinary person would have been crushed long ago." There were still quite a few problems with this fellow's research. Recently, the residents had allocated some funds, but it wasn't enough. The items aren't bad, but they're too expensive. How has Manor Head Zhu been recently? Niu Baidao laughed, just like that. He's probably been holding it in for the past few days. His reputation for killing 4 unrivaled experts is still there, but now his grandson looks at him like he's a monster. Su Yu laughed. Niu Baidao said, then he said, "There's something else I have to tell you. That cultivation technique of yours has received a lot of merit points. Manor Head said that you won't be able to use the merit points now and is prepared to use other things to exchange with you. Is there anything you need? Don't stand on ceremony. He has money. His boss has been the minister of the Huang department for so many years. The Huang department specializes in intelligence. When it comes to corruption, it's even more profitable than the Xian department." Su Yu laughed and said, "That can't be. The Xian department does business, and the Huang department is in charge of intelligence. How much income can they get? Then you don't understand. Just ask for more. What's there to be afraid of?" Before Su Yu could say anything, Zhao Li interjected, "If I remember correctly, the Darming King is also a divine array master. Back when the 100 Dao Pavilion was forged, the array formations of the 100 Dao Pavilion were mostly built by the Darming King himself. Right now, we need a heaven rank array formation. It is mainly used to absorb yuan qi and willpower. It can allow the weapon to recover on its own when it is damaged. This array formation isn't something that an ordinary person can set up. The Darming King can definitely set it up. Su Yu's benefits in the human realm are all gone. We need to change to a set of this array formation. It must be strong. It can be maintained for at least 3,000 to 5,000 years. It's best if it's invincible and can't be broken." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 24:17, Chapter 24:17, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers 5. Chapter 24:17, Chapter 522 Inviting Helpers 5. Niu Baidao sucked in a breath of cold air. "With your generosity, are you guys planning to forge a divine weapon? And you're invincible. Little Zhao, you're quite arrogant." Little Zhao. Su Yu wanted to laugh, but Zhao Li was speechless. "I look older than you." Forget it, this person really had a great seniority. Even his father's 4th generation had to address him as senior. Niu Baidao did not say much and nodded. "Alright, then PLL help you ask. If you don't want the gains from the human realm, it shouldn't be a problem to change to a stronger array formation." Then, he said, "Is it urgent? If it's urgent, PLL send it to you when the Darming King is done. Do you have any other requirements?" Zhao Li chuckled and said, "If the Daming King doesn't mind, add some defensive, offensive, teleportation, and space stabilization functions." Su Yu's mouth opened wide. "I thought old Zhao was a straightforward person, but I didn't expect you to be so shameless." Even if Su Yu didn't know anything about arrays, he knew that if he really wanted to be so omnipotent, the difficulty would increase by 10 times. Not only would he have to expend countless resources, he would also have to expend even more energy. However, he had done it beautifully. Niu Baidao couldn't help but laugh. "Alright, PLL relay the message. I don't know if it'll be successful or not." Zhao Li laughed. "If it can solve the problem of the array formation, then it'll be much easier to handle." "Right, Manor Head Niu, you're best at making divine talismans. Can you help make a set of storage divine talismans?" It's a small matter. He wasn't clear about Su Yu's expertise in divine talismans, but he did know one thing. Manor Head Nyo had once given him a divine talisman that concealed its strength. Other than being invincible, no one else could see through it. So it turned out that it was very proficient in the Tao of divine talismans. Niu Bendao readily agreed, but Zhao Li didn't hold back. He continued, this set of divine talismans must be strong and many. It must be a complete set. 10,000 pieces must be combined into a set, and it must be separated like a book page. It can absorb half-emperors and won't be damaged. Nyo Baidao's eyes widened. Holy shit! What on earth are you guys trying to do? Are you kidding me? It wasn't difficult to create the absorption divine talismans. It was very simple. The key was that 10,000 divine talismans could be combined into one set. What the F***ck do you take me for? You're even absorbing half-emperors without being damaged. Are you planning to kill 10,000 half-emperors to absorb them? Don't joke around. Nyo Baidao coughed lightly. Little Zhao, this joke isn't funny. Zhao Li said calmly, PM not joking. That's what this kid told me. I also told him not to joke around, but he insisted on saying that he wanted this kind of thing. There's nothing I can do. Suyu had an awkward expression on his face. Being looked at by the two of them, at this moment, he also felt that he had thought too simply before. Zhao Li was worthy of being a weapon forging master. He quickly knew what he needed and what he lacked. Heaven rank array formation, heaven rank divine talisman, 10,000 more. What a joke. Suyu hadn't considered these before. Now that he thought about it, yes, if he didn't have them, perhaps it would be fine. However, once the items were forged, it might not be as good as what people wanted. Nyo Baidao's teeth ached. Your request is too much. This thing, just from the few things you said, these are all prepared for divine weapons, right? Only divine talisman masters, divine array masters, and weapon forging masters would be able to do so. How long do you need to use them? A month. Nyo Baidao shook his head. That's impossible. Unless, you only need to produce 100 storage divine talismans first. Moreover, your requirements are too high. Accepting half-emperors? Are you kidding me? Invincible storage requires extraordinary divine talismans. You need a lot of materials. I don't have money. If you pay, PLL help you produce 100 for free. If you have too much, unless you have enough time, you won't be able to produce these. Suyu hurriedly nodded. I'll pay. That's easy to say. Nyo Baidao laughed. You're quite ambitious, kid. I see that the thing you're going to make this time isn't simple. If you pay, you can settle the matter of the array formation and divine talisman. As for the rest, you can do it yourself. Thank you, Principal. Suyu hurriedly thanked him, his heart filled with joy. After chatting for a while, another old man rushed over. The great Zhou Manor was not far from the heavenly residence, and Zhao Tianbing had arrived. As soon as he arrived, he smiled and said, Junior brother, you've finally remembered me. Looks like you need my help. Zhao Li snorted, he sneered and said, what a joke. I just feel sorry for you. You don't even have the materials to forge weapons, so PM giving you a chance. Just now, when the Tianzhu king wanted to participate, I didn't even give him a chance to participate. If you're not willing, quickly scram. In the distance, Zhao Tianbing walked over with a smile on his face. He didn't get angry and said with a smile, Junior brother is still so naughty. Suyu felt awkward. Why was old Zhao, who used to be highly respected, like a child in these people's words? Manor Head Nyo called little Zhao, and Zhao Tianbing told him not to be naughty. How awkward. He stole a glance at Zhao Li. Zhao Lp's face was indifferent, and he also looked at Suyu. When he saw Suyu looking at him, his eyes widened. What was he looking at? Suyu was speechless. He could only bully him. The group of people started to chat. Suyu also asked about the art of weapon forging. It had been some time since he last forged a weapon. Compared to Zhao Tianbing, he was still far from being able to forge a weapon. When it came to discussing the Tao, time passed very quickly. A day had passed, but no one came to disturb Suyu and the others. The next day, someone from Daming Manor came. Zhu Tianfang personally sent someone over. 3 Earth Division soldiers. Apart from Hu Qi, there were 2 other Earth Division soldiers. Daming Manor's weapon forging strength was stronger than the Great Xia Manor. At this point, including Suyu, there were a total of 6 Earth Division soldiers participating. In addition, they weren't considered invincible. One was helping to build the array formation, while the other was helping to build the divine talisman. As for Suyu, he quickly brought his people and drove the ancient city away. However, after he came and went, the myriad clans in the heavens quickly received the news. Suyu was preparing to cast his weapon. He asked for the help of 5 Earth Weapons Division. Perhaps they were used to cast heaven weapons. It had to be said that this fellow had some connections in the human realm. Suyu was on good terms with the Daming Manor, which everyone knew. The 4th generation of the Great Xia Manor also had a good relationship with him. Only Suyu was able to ask for the help of 5 Earth Weapons Division in such a situation. Under such a situation, he was able to invite 5 Earth Division commanders to help him. If it was someone else, they would probably not have any Earth Division commanders on the human side who would agree to help him. However, Suyu did not care about this. The huge ancient city once again fell to the ground. The huge waves caused the circle of ships that had just been repaired in the 9 realms to suffer another blow. The experts of the 9 realms completely gave up. Damn it! I'm not repairing it anymore. Do whatever you want. Being neighbors with Suyu was bad luck for them for 8 lifetimes. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 24:18, Chapter 24:18, Chapter 523 The Beginning of Weapon Forging L. Chapter 24:18, Chapter 523 The Beginning of Weapon Forging L. Ancient City, City Lord's Mansion. The Heaven Yuan Qi was frighteningly rich. Suyu did not lack Heaven Yuan Qi, he could just extract some whenever he had the time. Right now, he could extract Heaven Yuan Qi very quickly. At this moment, the Death Qi and Heaven Yuan Qi were mixed and consumed each other. The Yuan Qi emitted was quite suitable for cultivation. Of the 5 weapon forging masters, Zhao Li, Zhao Tianbing, and Hu Qi were all acquaintances. The other 2 were not very familiar, but Suyu had seen them before. They weren't young anymore, and they were a little old. At this moment, the 2 old men were still a little dazed. What dense Heaven Yuan Qi? Suyu had once imparted the art of longevity to these old men, and in reality, it was the method to stimulate the life force of the immortals. At this moment, the 2 old men felt the Heaven Yuan Qi enter their bodies, and some of the accumulated injuries seemed to be dissipating. They were a little shocked, but also a little embarrassed. These Heaven Yuan Qi, Suyu was preparing to use it to forge weapons to recover, right? If he absorbed it, how embarrassing would that be? Suyu didn't think too much about it. There was still one person present, but he wasn't that unfamiliar and was more familiar with him. At this moment, seeing that person looking around, he couldn't help but laugh and say, "Principal, what are you looking at?" Hu Xianqing chuckled and said, "I'm not looking at anything. You wanted me to bring a spatial cutter over so that you could prepare to cut through space. Let me see where it fits." Cutting through space can easily cause space to collapse. Didn't they say that the ancient city has a dead soul realm? Let's see if we can enter the dead soul realm to cut through it. That way, it won't matter even if it collapses. Humph. A cold snort resounded throughout the hall. Hu Xianqing was startled. Who? Suyu said calmly, "It's nothing, Principal. There's a dead soul sovereign behind us who loves to eavesdrop on our conversations. It's nothing." Everyone was stunned. Zhao Li was also stunned as he looked at Suyu. F***ck, even a sovereign of the dead can eavesdrop on us in this godforsaken place of yours? Suyu shrugged. Seeing everyone looking at him, he said helplessly, "She's different from the other undead. The other undead go back when they have nothing to do. She doesn't leave and stays in the passageway all day long. That's why she can sometimes hear us when we speak." I was also very helpless. Some undead lords wouldn't guard the passageway and wouldn't be so free. An ordinary lord would actually have their own undead kingdom down there. There would also be stars and moons, but she wouldn't be going back anytime soon. In the past, she would go back to cultivate. Recently, she had been staying in the passageway and wouldn't leave no matter what. Suyu couldn't do anything about it. A group of people looked at Suyu with a strange expression. How could he be at ease like this? He was really extraordinary. Hu Xiansheng was also a little embarrassed. F***ck, I won't be targeted by this sovereign of the dead spirit, right? He was a little speechless. Then, we can't cut the space of the dead spirit realm. Suyu nodded, yes, we can only cut the space of the heavenly battlefield. So be it. It's nothing. It's not our loss even if it's destroyed. Besides, it's just cutting a little space. In an invincible war, it's fine even if so much space collapses, let alone us. Hu Xianqing nodded and did not say anything else. Suyu looked at Hu Xian. Sheng and did not waste any time. He said directly, "This time, I invited the masters here to help me forge a civil weapon. However, the amount of work is too big. It's not something that one or two people can complete." Since Suyu was ready to forge weapons, he had some arrangements. At this moment, he looked at Hu Xianqing and said, "Dean Hu's task is very simple. Help me cut out 300 small spaces. One space is about the size of 10 mu of land. It doesn't need to be too big." Just as he finished speaking, Zhao Li shook his head and said, "No, it's too small. You're underestimating the size of the bodies of those great demons." Zhao Li quickly corrected him, "A space needs to be at least 1,000 meters in length, width, and height. It's best to compress it as much as possible. By that, you also have to compress it twice to compress the space to the size of a thin piece of paper." Hu Xianqing was stunned. He looked at Zhao Li and said, "Zhao Li, you must be joking. This is too much work." Zhao Li shook his head and said, "PM not joking. Cut the crap. Increase the price. Suyu, pay up." Suyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Hu Xianqing and said, "Principal, don't worry. I will pay for your next research. Before I die, I will pay for all of your research funds." "Of course. No problem." Hu Xianqing was overjoyed. "Deal. 300 pieces, right? 1,000 meters in length, width, and height, that's not a small volume. If it's 300 pieces, a 300,000 meter long, wide, and high space will collapse." This volume was very big. Even a 600-kilometer long square space was going to be cut off. Hu Xianqing sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "It's best to cut it apart. If we cut it together, a city-sized area would be cut into a black hole. Suyu, let's make it clear in advance that cutting such a large space might attract the attention of Invincible. You have to deal with it." Suyu nodded. Of course. The other people had solemn expressions on their faces at this moment. Just by creating a space, everyone knew that this weapon forging was not ordinary. Even if it was just creating the simplest storage ring, such a large storage ring could already be considered an Earth soldier. It could even be considered more than that. It could be seen from this. A single piece of space was 100 million cubic meters. A total of 300 pieces. What exactly was Suyu trying to create? If it was a storage ring, there was no need to create such a large one. 30 billion cubic meters. Moreover, it had to be cut separately. Could it be that he was going to create 300 storage rings? Zhao Tianbing said solemnly, "What do I need to do?" Suyu said, "Uncle Master Zhao's task is very simple. Forge 302 pages. It can compress the space that Dean Hu cut into 300 pieces of space. The other is the front and back of the book.